about that, and I'm gonna text the president. His name's drawing a blank right now.
It's
And
Nagy, right? It's Jim Nagy?
Yes, Jim. I'm gonna be like, Jim, hey buddy, where's my lifetime Reese's Buttercups, buddy? Because this is unacceptable. I am a Hall of Famer. Where is my Reese's Buttercups?
They have to have something for you, right? There's got to be like a peanut butter flavored jacket or something that goes along with being.
I mean, I'm seriously gonna text them right after this phone call.
All right. Well, as much as I joke about that right now, it is an important time for prospects that are trying to make a name for themselves in this NFL pre-draft process, and we're going to be talking about that a lot this week on the show. Right now, Karene Reed, Junior Tafuna are down there at the Senior Bowl, and the early reports are that both of them are having great practices. Both of them are showing out, and that is what, of course, all Utah football fans expect. But you kind of already touched on this, how important it was for you. How important can this be for those two guys representing Utah and, more importantly, trying to build a career for themselves at the professional level?
Yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity to go with the best seniors, and sometimes they allow juniors into that game that want to improve their stock, which is awesome, to show what you're about, how you are in meetings, how do you present yourself to other teammates, how are you when you warm up, how are you in drills, the athleticism aspect of it for Keanu Reed, like how is he in space? Can he cover? Can he be like a will linebacker nickel type? Is he a box linebacker? Is he going to be limited in that? Like, there are a lot of question marks that you can see in practice. I mean, the practice is 1,000 times more important than the game, right? Most of those scouts, GMs, coaches leave after the last practice. So they are there. They meet with you after practice. It's just real intimate, and it's a great op to go prove yourself and to elevate your stock in the right way. So I'm excited for those guys to go show out and then put their best foot forward.
From your viewpoint, is this a better and truer evaluation of a football player than the overemphasis people do with workouts, with pro days, with the throwing on air for quarterbacks and things like this? If you're the GM, and I still think at some point that's probably in your future, however far down the line, like, are you using these types of situations, practices like this at the Senior Bowl or at the East-West Shrine game or whatever it is, as your number one evaluation of a player along with their game film?
Oh, 100%. This is gold for a lot of those coaches that value playing football as the number one requirement to get a seat in the NFL. And the organizations that value value football players and not speed time and not what they do on air against no pressure, those are the teams that win, and those are the teams that ultimately have a lot of success. So I think there's a component of, certain drills and how you compare one guy to the next. If you're doing the same drill, like there is a point for those, and seeing a guy's arm strength throwing on air. Can he make all the throws? Can he do it in a timely fashion? How's his footwork? If you get him off the spot, does he have a mental breakdown? Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can do. But in these moments, Sean, I'll tell you, like, you can stress these guys in meetings, really challenge them. How do they process information? How do they handle coaching? How do they handle being the pressure-packed situations? You just install the offense. All right, now we're going to go out on a walkthrough. Does he recall the information? Does it take him multiple times? Like, all those things factor in, because if you struggle, you're getting an early look at these guys in a setting where that's their lives, right? Not in a controlled setting at the combine where they practice these questions and practice how to speak and how to talk and what's the correct answer to say. Like, it's all fake. In this setting, it's real and much more viable, I think.
So worthwhile to check out for all of you Ute fans that are hoping to see Corrine Reed, Junior Tafuna, and whatever other Utes can make their way into the NFL. Try to follow, try to evaluate what you can from the information that is released by the Senior Bowl, which, by the way, is more than you get from practices when they're at the University of Utah. So there is that. Jumping to the actual NFL, jumping to the thing I wanted to talk most about, the AFC and NFC championship games last weekend, and, of course, the Super Bowl matchup is set. It'll be Philadelphia versus Kansas City, a rematch from a couple seasons ago. Is this the best game? Is it, when you take a look at it, a lot of people didn't want to see this one because we've seen it before. But is this, in your mind, this is the game of the two best teams in the NFL?
Shoot, man, if you're the Rams, you're kicking yourself because you were the better team than the Eagles, and you would have blown out the Commanders, Redskins, and would have been in the Super Bowl. And on the flip side, every 50-50 call somehow goes the Chiefs' way in the Bills game, and now the Chiefs are in there for the third consecutive season on a chance to do something that's never been done. And as much as I don't like that the Chiefs are there, because I wish someone would beat them, you just got to tip your hat and say there are levels to what is going on. And the reason why they're in the Super Bowl is because they have elite coaches that process and execute elite situational football. And those situations, they are always on the right side of them, and those situations get them to the Super Bowl. They weren't the better team. They but in those situations, their coaches put their players in the best position to execute and be successful in those downs. And that's why you win the playoffs, guys. You don't turn the ball over. Situational football, you're on the right side of them, you win. That's how you do it. That's the recipe. And they are better than anybody, maybe potentially in the history of the NFL, with Spagnuolo and Andy Reid running the show. And situationally, they are incredible. And I just, out of respect to the game, I tip my hat and just marvel at the job those two have done.
How well do you know Spags? He feels like a guy that Eric Weddle would love to play for.
Oh, my gosh. We've crossed paths, obviously, his coaching days and me playing against him. And then before he went back to Kansas City in the 2019 season, my last year in L.A., he was actually he came to Rams camp, and I sat there and talked to him for like 20 minutes, just talking shop, talking ball, his mind, and trying to get anything I could get out of him to make me a better player and coach. And he is just one of a kind. You look at how his players talk about him. Chris Jones saying, we're going to be in the Super Bowl every year as long as he's our coach. Like, that says everything you need to know about the coach, the man, the leader, how he prepares. And there's not a better big game coordinator in the history of the NFL than Steve Spagnuolo. It's crazy. I fully expect him to put a defensive game plan together and shut down the Eagles. I kid you not. I would be shocked if they don't dominate the game on defense.
So it was interesting for me. I was flying back home from Dubai when this game was happening, so I was watching it at the airport, and I got my phone in my hand as I'm sitting there watching this airport TV. And when that 4th and 5 came up, it was wild to see how many. I follow yourself. I follow guys that played in the league, and everybody that I consider to be a good football mind, in anticipation of the 4th and 5 play, said some version of Spags is going to heat up Josh Allen right now. The pressure's coming. Where's it coming from? Like, everybody knew it was going to happen. Did the Bills call the right play? Did they put him in the best situation? Because social media knew what was coming, but it felt like maybe the Bills didn't.
Sean, I still feel weird calling you Sean, by the way. It's like I want to say Murph, but out of respect, I say Sean now, so just know every time I say Sean, it's actually really weird for me, but I do it because I love you and you're a pro now, so and you're one of the best, so just understand that. But
I appreciate that. You can get away with calling me Murph. Other people can't. You can if you want to.
I don't. We're adults now, so it's kind of in the past. But anyways, anybody, like you said, everybody knew. When the game is online, you talk about we have these meetings. Got to have it. Game on the line. What are we going to do? If the opponent, who is the coordinator, what are they going to do? When they lined up, I kid you not, I was with two other people. It was Chanel and I think Gage. We were all watching the game. I said, verbatim, they're bringing the corner blitz in a zero. Watch. Because if you as an offense dare put a receiver close to the tackle box in a situation like that, you have to, 100% have to anticipate they potentially could bring that guy because look, then it coincided the safeties all over the top of that receiver at 10 yards, knowing that they're going to bring zero and he's going to bring that guy. Like, I don't understand for the life of me how you don't slide the protection that way and pick it up and go win the game. Why? I don't know. Maybe they didn't go over it. Maybe they didn't go over that situation. We're on the flip side. You know who did? The Chiefs do, and they execute it, and that's why they're going to the Super Bowl.
A heartbreaker of a play. Josh Allen able to get the ball off, and beloved former Ute Dalton Kincaid unable to reel the pass in. I just watched another replay of it. Pat McAfee shows on the TV in front of me. They're going over it right now. I just watched another replay of it. Would have been a really, really tough catch. We've seen him make really tough catches. It's like deja vu. The week before, it was Mark Andrews dropping that pass. This one, a tougher catch and a younger player, but a guy who I think in a lot of situations does make that catch. And it's probably a repetitive question, but, I mean, what are you saying to a guy like Dalton Kincaid after a moment like that one?
Well, I mean, he's bumming. The whole team's bumming. He would be the first one to say that he expects to make that catch, and we expect him to make that catch because that's how good he is. So he didn't make it. But when you look back at the game, never one play loses you a game. Everyone can say it does. The media can harp on it. Oh, it was this one play. You had your chances. The 4th and 1 early when they were up 1, that's why they lost the game. Because you, as a coaching staff, kept deciding that the QB sneak was the right play call. Like, hello, they've been stopping it 2 times before that. You don't have any other plays that are better than getting a first down than that one, right? And so you had your chances, and you left it up to a thrown up jump ball, miraculously try to throw it up to try to win the game. You didn't deserve to win because you didn't win the situational game within the game. And that's really what needs to be called out, not Dalton Kincaid. He tried his best. He played through a season with a bunch of injuries, and you can tell what the guys think of him in the locker room. But it just goes back to those situations. You didn't execute those in the biggest of moments. That's why you lose.
Eric Weddle, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the AFC Championship game. We'll get to the NFC Championship game as well. Cole Bishop, I know you like him as a player. He got the start. Injury forced him into the start. Ended up leading the team in tackles. He had some really great moments. He had a couple of moments that he's probably not enjoying studying the film on. Got run over a couple of times, but I thought played pretty well. You have a much more educated eye on something like that. What do you think of Cole Bishop in a huge moment getting the start?
Shoot, the biggest game of his life, and was able to rise up and show that he belongs. Right? Like, he should go into this offseason with the utmost confidence that he's going to have a great career and to improve and use this game as a building block of what he wants his career to become. So I first want to say that. 2, yeah, I mean, the NFL's hard, guys, and you're going to get ran over. You're gonna have good plays. You're going to have some not so good plays, and you live, you learn, and you improve from it. You don't make excuses. And I thought he showed for being thrown in to start in the biggest game of the year against a all-time great team. He showed that he belonged, and he's going to be a great player for a long time. I would only hope, on the jump ball in the high red where the guy came down with it. First of all, it touched the ground, so it should have been incomplete. Second of all, we talk about coaching. Why are you challenging it when there was a defensive holding call on the play anyways? You're not going to get that yardage back. It's going to be a first down. Dumb by Sean. And third, I want you to go attack that ball and go catch it with your hands, right? That would be the coaching point. And you can do that. You have the ability, and that will be when you become one of the great safeties in the NFL, which you will become.
Strong words there from Eric Weddle for Cole Bishop. James, cut that up and send it and email it to Cole Bishop. He's going to need to hear that from our guy. All right, other side of the equation is that NFC Championship game. The Eagles, behind the best offensive line in football and a great running back, they just continue to dominate. Jalen Hurts, though, is not getting enough love, in my opinion, through these playoffs. They talked about when the playoffs began whether or not the Eagles can win despite Jalen Hurts. You're winning in a lot of these situations because of Jalen Hurts. Is he not getting enough credit?
It's never enough for some people. All he does is win. All he does is a team guy to navigate that team, those personalities. Nobody's perfect, right? And I just think that everyone wants to see the quarterback throw for 417 touchdowns in a game and this and that, and that's just not reality in the playoffs. Like, defenses are really, really good, and at the end of the day, you just want to win and move on and advance by any means necessary. The guys, you probably learn this as the older you get because you know those opportunities are few and far between, and when you get there, you don't really care how it happens, right? You don't care. You win and you move on. If you throw for 100 yards, I don't care. We won, right? But it's never enough. So I think do I think he's as talented and as good a quarterback as maybe 10 other guys? No. But do I love his mentality? Do I love his leadership? Do I love that he doesn't make excuses? Yeah, I do. I love that a lot. Would I like to play and be a teammate of him? Hell yeah, I would. So as a retired has-been, he has a lot of qualities that I value and that I respect. And I think sometimes that gets lost in how we look at players nowadays.
Saquon Barkley has emerged, obviously, as the best running back in the league this year and continues to have a dominant playoff run. Is it going to be enough that he can run on Spags' defense, that he can run on the Chiefs, that he can put, 100-plus yards and a couple of touchdowns on the board in a Super Bowl?
I would doubt that Spags allows him to run. I don't even know. I don't even think he'll rush for more than 75 yards, in my opinion. I just don't think they will allow it. They got the corners to match up outside, and I'm not saying man up every play and press and do all that stuff, but they have the ability where who did they just play?
Commanders.
Yeah, the Redskins. Their secondary was had a tough time in those situations. So they really had a tough time stopping the run because you're leaving those guys out to dry. Where I think the Chiefs can match up, and I think they're going to go out and say we need to stop the run, and we need to limit those ops, and we got to affect the quarterback and live with Hurts trying to beat us through the air. And if he does, so be it. We're just not letting the best player in the league beat us.
So who's your pick? Chiefs or Eagles? And I'll have you on again next week, so if your opinion changes in a week, then I guess you could change your pick as well. But watching what you saw last weekend and based on everything we know right now, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl?
Gosh, that's going to be tough. I think the Eagles are the more talented, and I think they can match up physicality-wise, offensive line, defensive line. But in my heart of hearts, I just can't go against the greatness of Spags and Andy Reid. And I just think when it comes down to it, they'll find a way by their play calling, by the situational football, by coaching them up over the next 2 weeks that they'll find a way to win. And we're going to see something that's never been done, and you're going to witness the greatest dynasty in the NFL. And you better set aside the GOAT conversation of Andy Reid and Belichick and old Kermit the Frog and Tom Brady, because he's coming.
I love that you just called Patrick Mahomes Kermit the Frog, man. He needs voice lessons. It would make him so much cooler. It would make him so much cooler if he didn't sound like that. It's wild. All right.
He is one of a kind, man.
Other stuff around the NFL. Chuck Pagano is coming out of retirement to join the Ravens staff. I don't know if you saw this, but I know you have connections with that Ravens staff, and you love those guys. And Chuck Pagano is joining that staff as a senior defensive backs coach and analyst. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can get a coach back in the building with the knowledge and just expertise and just a different eye on coverages and how to play certain things, I think it's always an advantage and a plus at that level, okay? Because you know at the end of the day, he's not trying to take someone's job. He's not going to try to be D coordinator or head coach. He's just trying in there because he wants to be around ball and he wants to help, and especially in that organization. It's welcome because, they brought Dean Bees back to help out and kind of navigate Coach Orr's first year, who is one of my best friends. And, they welcome that stuff. It's as a coach, you want to be challenged. You want to be pushed. You want new ideas. You want conversation of what the best way to do things are for the players, right? And if you're not doing that for the players, you're doing a disservice to them. So I love it. I think at other places it's not good because a lot of coaches have ultimatums or ulterior motives, I should say, and you can't. At the end of the day, how much can you really trust these guys? Where at that place, I think it's a great fit.
All right, before I let you go, a Utes question, because this came across the radar yesterday. The way too early college football playoff projections from ESPN for 2025, 2026. And Bill Connolly's got Utah back in the playoff. Now, that's obviously a nod to Kyle Whittingham. That's a nod to the consistency of this program. It would be a drastic turnaround from the football that you saw this year, but with a healthy team, I don't see why it's not possible. Your thoughts on what that would mean for Utah, that kind of a turnaround, with one projection at least putting them in a college football playoff, which would mean they're Big 12 champs as well.
Well, wouldn't that be the dream scenario? And I think the expectation year in and year out is to be conference champs and to get in the playoff. I mean, do what we do, control what we control, the additions on the staff. I know the energy is high. We'll see how spring ball goes and how those players develop and how the culture is rebounding from what we witnessed last year. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. Projections are projections. I don't really pay much attention to it until the bullets are live. But I think the additions, there are a lot of talking heads think highly of some of the additions we've made and the impact it can have. And we stay healthy and go do what we do. I mean, we have as good a shot as anybody, in my opinion.
Well, we got plenty left between now and when those games actually get played. So we'll be talking with Eric Weddle throughout. I'll chat with you again next week, dude. I appreciate your time as always.
Of course, babe. Love you. Have a good one.
Love you, dude. That's Eric Weddle, head coach of the Rancho Bernardo Broncos, Utah football legend, NFL veteran. And look, I love his breakdown of, without film in front of him, by the way, of that fourth down play for the Bills, just knowing what a defense is going to bring in a scenario like that. And as he was talking about it, I was fortunate enough to have the replay on the screen in front of me on the Pat McAfee show. They were going over the same thing, and it's so funny because you've got a guy whose mind, Eric Weddle's mind with football is, the way he processes football is really intense. It's really insane. He's a savant when it comes to football, and his knowledge of not only what he would want to be doing there, but what the tendencies of a coach are and the tendencies of an offense that are going to trigger the tendencies of the defensive coach are, and that's what the Bills did. They walked out there with the trips on the left, with the receiver on the boundary side, was close to the line of scrimmage, and that triggered what ended up happening. Now, ultimately, Josh Allen was able to get the ball off. It was not the look that they wanted, and we would love to see Dalton Kincaid make that catch, but really fascinating to hear from a guy who knew what was going to happen watching it, because a lot of people seemed like they knew what was going to happen. So when these coaches go back, I'm sure they don't say, all right, here's the moment in the game that we probably could have had a better play call. I'm sure they don't go back and cross-reference what social media was saying and what Eric Weddle's Twitter was saying and what Jeff Schwartz, who's going to join us later on the show today, what his tweet was in that exact moment. All of those guys were predicting what happened. So for coaches that are in the game and in that moment, it's a wild scenario to think that these guys in the heat of it are not possessed of the same predictive qualities that the rest of us armchair quarterbacks are. It's really fascinating to me. Big thanks to Eric Weddle for starting off the show with us today. We have so much to get to on the program. We're going to go back-to-back with guests. Josh Furlong is going to join us. Utah basketball with a big win over Cincinnati despite some really sloppy play. How did they get it done and stay in the win column? Josh Furlong will tell us next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
BYU.com.
Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. We continue a Utah and football heavy show with Josh Furlong, Utes Insider at KSL.com sports director. Friend of the program because I like Josh a lot. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, man?
Doing all right. So I want to get to the Utah running Utes win last night, but I have a couple of football questions for you first. You are an AP Top 25 voter. Have you already created your way too early 2025 rankings for the upcoming football season like everyone else seems to be doing on the football front these days?
No, unfortunately, I don't do that. Look, man, like I think these way too early things were always kind of interesting, but in this transfer portal era, it's so hard to be able to gauge things. Now, don't get me wrong, like the top 10 teams are probably still going to be your top 10 teams. It's the rest of the 15 that you're kind of deciding between, but I don't know. I mean, it's fun content at this time of the season, and, you know, I'm always looking at it. I have a spreadsheet that tracks everything, but for the most part, I stay out of that until at the very least spring, where I've kind of seen how these teams manage things.
Yeah, till you actually have some information that might apply to the upcoming season. Imagine that. It's a crazy thing. I love it. I love when they release these projections. I'm going to spend some time on what ESPN has done with their projections because Schlabach has as BYU is the best team in the Big 12 conference next year, and Connolly has Utah being the best team in the Big 12 conference this year. And obviously for us, that would be fun. That would be fascinating, but I'm mostly with you that there's a lot that can happen between now and then that would affect our ability to predict such things.
It's fun, though. I mean, like, I think that's the thing. Like, regardless of what it is, you know, I kind of had a debate on Twitter with some people yesterday about the Conley's projection for Utah. And it's like, look, if you're being talked about as a favorite team, embrace it, right? Like, I understand the preseason accolades and preseason champions type stuff is nothing. And obviously Utah had a rough year last year, and so their number one pick in the Big 12 meant nothing. But look, it just means that there's expectations for you, right? Like you're excited about the program. People want to be able to put you in that conversation, and more or less, that's a good thing, right? In this era where you're supposed to market yourself and do everything, that's as good as gold. And obviously, it's got to back itself up on the field. But I mean, to be able to be talked about in that conversation, and to have both Utah and BYU in that conversation is phenomenal. It means more. It gives us an opportunity to have these games mean something. So you've got to be happy about that.
All right, focusing on things that are actually happening here in the state presently, Utah basketball last night against Cincinnati found a way to get the win impressively while still being sloppy with possession, multiple turnovers in this game. I think I saw you tweet about it, that they basically led every statistical category in the game except they kept coughing the ball up. How did they manage to still find the win here?
Yeah, honestly, like there's moments in that game where I kept looking at the stats. I'm like, these have to be wrong, right? Like Utah was shooting at one point something like 58%. Cincinnati was at like 35%, and it was a 3-point game. And it was just wild to kind of see it unfold because Utah was winning in all the statistical categories. But the problem was they kept turning the ball over, kept giving Cincinnati some momentum. I mean, they turn it over in the end 19 times. That translates to 21 points for Cincinnati. I mean, it felt like a game where, this Cincinnati team is actually a really solid team, and they're good and they're aggressive, but they weren't able to get it going last night, and yet they were still in the game. But Utah never really kind of established their own dominance, right? They'd have these moments where they'd go up by 6 or 8, or doing these things that would allow them to kind of start to pull away. And once again, the turnovers would rear their head, and different things would happen where they couldn't find what they needed to do. So, look, this is a team that, for whatever reason, they just can't get into a consistent rhythm. I think they have the talent to be able to compete with most teams in the Big 12. That's not to say that, they're going to be favored in these games. But they continue to fight. They continue to find new ways to be able to do it, even when Gabe Madsen isn't always at his peak in terms of shooting three-pointers. But they're finding ways to do it. And oddly enough, they found a way to do it at the free throw line. So, maybe there's small improvements and they're getting better. But it's definitely not the prettiest basketball, but they're finding ways to win.
Is it possible for this team to have a game where all of their best players have good games together? Because it feels like there must be some tacit agreement at shoot-around beforehand where they're just like, okay, it's your night to have a good game. I'm going to have kind of a substandard game tonight. We've seen so many different guys for this team sort of lead the charge in different games, and maybe that's a good thing. I really can't decide yet if it is or not, but I'm struck by the idea that it's like if Gabe Madsen's going to have a good game, it means you're going to get less from Ezra Asar. Or if Jake Wallin's going to have a phenomenal game, it probably means that Keanu Dawes is going to be pedestrian that night. I don't know why that phenomenon happens. Am I even correct in assessing it that way?
Yeah, no, I absolutely think you're right. I mean, I think this is a situation where it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Where Utah doesn't necessarily have a star player. That's not to say that they don't have potential guys that could do that, but I think it's a team that is more complete as a team, right? Like it's a team that's combined of a bunch of role players that are working to be able to get their own. And when they're working together as a team, it works really well, and it doesn't really matter who goes off, right? Like Ezra Asar has obviously shown that he's been able to be more consistent recently, and he gets his minutes. And then you have moments where Gabe Madsen does. Obviously, he's been in a shooting slump. Keanu Dawes does well. Lawson Lovren does well. And it's great to be able to have multiple people that can step up and kind of be your leading scorer for the night. But that's partially the problem, is there's no consistency there. So when Gabe isn't hitting his shots, who's that guy, right? Who do you turn to? And I don't know that that's a sustainable model, right? Like, I don't know that it's a situation where you can go into each game and just kind of roll with the punches and hope that it works. In some respects, it works, but I think Utah has to find a way to unlock something with one of these guys if they expect to go on a run, here at the most important part of the season. So whether that's Gabe, whether that's Ezra, it could be somebody else. I do think somebody has to step up, or these 50-50 games are, going to be much more difficult for Utah to compete with. And you're seeing that, last Saturday against Baylor, Utah was doing really well and then suddenly went on a 10-minute scoring drought because there's nobody that can really take over the game, nobody that really can be that aggressive guy. And so it really just changes the nature of the game if nobody's willing to step up.
KSL.com sports director and Utes insider Josh Furlong, my guest here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. You just said something there, if they're going to make a run. Is it reasonable to expect Utah in their first year in the Big 12 Conference, knowing how good this basketball conference is, to make a little bit of noise? I mean, Craig Smith is in, his fourth year, and he's found his stride at that point or earlier at all of his previous spots. It's been tough sledding so far up on the hill. Is it reasonable for fans and for all of us who watch this program closely to expect that they can make a little bit of noise either heading into the Big 12 tournament or in that Big 12 tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still an uphill battle, right? I mean, I think their schedule lays out really well right now. They went through one of the hardest schedules in the Big 12 starting it out. And getting that win against Cincinnati really kind of propels you as you go on the road, and you can go against Oklahoma State, Colorado, two teams that are sub 100 in the rankings. You then go and you play West Virginia and Cincinnati again. All of those can be winnable games. And if for whatever reason you go on a 4 or 5 game win streak, maybe you go 3-2 in that stretch, I still think that gives you momentum as you enter that Kansas game when they come to town. Now, look, Kansas is next level, and they've always been kind of that next level team. But if you can show that you can be competitive in all these other games and at least have forward momentum, I think that gives Utah some hope. At the end of the day, I don't know that this team can ultimately get to the NCAA tournament that everybody wants. But I think if you can continue to stack these games and continue to progress, that gives you optimism. And maybe you do enough that salvages this year where you can get some guys that can come back next year and get some consistency, and then you can have a better jumping off point. But, I think best case scenario right now, again, is an NIT, and nobody really wants to hear that. They want the NCAA tournament. But if they can kind of translate that to having success this year and then trying to hopefully move that to next year, maybe there's some hope. But right now, it's going to take a Herculean effort as well as other teams kind of losing along the way for Utah to really be in that mix late.
On the big picture front, obviously conversations around college sports have changed pretty drastically in these last 3, 4, 5 years. Now you're talking about general managers, and you're talking about NIL funds, and you're talking about the collective, and pretty soon we're talking about revenue sharing, and to be determined whether or not that's subject to Title IX equality and things like that. And look, Utah is an elite university with elite sports programs, but not a bottomless pit of money, not an endless stream of revenue or donation from especially the sports crowd. So football obviously has its work cut out for it. Basketball, men's basketball is trying to play catch up to some of the other programs right now in the Big 12 conference. Women's basketball is strong, but if you want to continue that effort, that costs you money. Gymnastics, I think, has a different role at Utah than it does at a lot of schools, even other schools in the Big 12. And these things might not be directly related to each other in every case, but they're also not operating in a vacuum, because the money and the NIL money especially has to come from somewhere. So when you look at what the expectations of fans are, that you're supposed to be good in every sport, and the reality of trying to sustain that on a football, men's basketball, women's basketball, gymnastics front, baseball, everything else, how possible is it for the University of Utah to be an athletic department that fields elite programs in every sport?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think, the more and more this kind of develops, and especially with these teams outside of the Power Two, the Big Ten and the SEC, that margin for error is so much, much higher, right? Like, in the sense that you can be great at one sport and maybe a second sport, but it's not going to be easy to be able to be great, or at least in terms of great, meaning investment, right? Everybody's going to invest in football if they're engaged in football, right? Like, those teams are going to continue to do that, and that's the moneymaker. You have to. But outside of that, there becomes a real conversation about what's next. Men's basketball is about the only profitable sport outside of football at most universities, and that's the case at Utah. As good as gymnastics is at Utah, and they get a tremendous amount of sport, and their collective is one of the best in the country for gymnastics, it's still a losing sport. They lose money every single year. And so it's a tough challenge, right? Like, do you embrace men's basketball and football and then kind of just put the others to the wayside, and if they do well, so be it? I think that's the problem right now, is right for Utah specifically. They've embraced football. They've honed in on that. They've got the donors. Obviously, they can do more, and that's what they want to do. But it's the decision on what are they going to do with men's basketball. Obviously, the NIL money comes into the game, and you've got to be able to be competitive, or else it doesn't matter who you hire on the Hill. You can say, Craig Smith isn't the right coach. Okay, who are you going to bring in that's going to be any better based on the circumstances? I'm not saying you couldn't, but I'm saying it has to be the investment. And so I think this is the time specifically where Mark Harlan and then that athletic department really have to hone in and say, okay, what do we want to be great at, and what do we hope that we can kind of be good at based on limited resources? And I don't know that there's an answer to that yet, but I think you're going to start seeing a more clear, definite decision on that, especially as these players are getting paid and they have to make a distinction on paper. So, it's a tough challenge. I don't envy them by any means, but I'd have to imagine that football and men's basketball kind of become the premier focus, but that's easier said than done.
All right, before I let you go, I'm about to talk about this in the hot lunch, so I wanted your thoughts on it. Devin Dampier plus 15,000 to win the Heisman, according to the DraftKings odds. Jake Retzlaff, the same number, plus 15,000. You throwing a little cash on that, Josh? Trying to hit big?
I mean, why not, right? Like, I mean, those odds, like, even if you put $5, $10 down, I mean, you could do well. I mean, no, the reality there is like, I think, is Devin Dampier a legitimate candidate for that? Probably not, but I don't think it's that far off from what Utah fans think it could be. I mean, he has the skill set, and I've said this on my own podcast that, he's not Jaden Daniels, but he has the same career arc, or at least the potential to be that person, right? He's got the skill set where he can be a true dual threat quarterback. If he increases his passing efficiency and doing different things that way, he absolutely could be in that mix. That's exactly the type of caliber of quarterbacks that the Heisman voters look for. So it sounds funny, and obviously, if he wins, somebody could win some significant cash. But I think this could be a legitimate thing down the road. I just think it's a little premature. But celebrate it, right? Like, it's an opportunity to be able to say you've got somebody on the roster that can be in that conversation.
You heard it here first. Josh Furlong's gonna take some petty cash out from the KSL.com sports department. He's gonna throw it.
You did not hear that. That's the private thing, if that's the case.
All right. Appreciate your time. We'll chat again soon. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, man.
That's Josh Furlong. Great stuff from him, as always, on Utes basketball, Utah football. We could ask him about the upcoming Super Bowl, whatever. Josh is super dialed in everywhere. All right, Hot Lunch is coming. I've got a get-rich-quick scheme for all of you. But if you don't want to listen to my get-rich-quick scheme, don't worry. We've got a cash kickoff going on right now at ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Text the word SPEND to 508-777-1000. That's 508-777-1000 for a chance to win $1,000 to pay your bills. 508-777-1000. Text the word SPEND to 508-777-1000. This is a nationwide contest. Hot Lunch and that Get Rich Quick is coming next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Show today and every day brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. Tires, wheels, and accessories for whatever you drive. Stop by the local Les Schwab. The professionals there will get the job done right the very first time. Sean O'Connell Show with the hot lunch for you. Scott Mitchell joining us next. Jeff Schwartz will join us in hour number 3, as will Belle Fraser, to talk a little Utah Hockey Club. They're in action again on Friday and on Sunday. A sort of a, I don't know if you'd call it a matinee game. It's earlier. It's like 5 p.m., I think, on Sunday, which is earlier than the games. The puck typically drops. So, anyway, we'll get to all of that on the show today. For the hot lunch, inspired by Spence Checketts, who came roaring in for Crosstalk yesterday with the way too early predictions from Bill Connolly on ESPN.
He did come in hot with those, didn't he?
He really did. It was great. It was
awesome. You love the passion.
And, you know, the observation was that Bill Connolly in the way too early prediction has Utah winning the Big 12 Conference and making the college football playoff. That is the expectation. We talked about that with Eric Weddle. Every single year now, that is the expectation. And as I've said before on the show, Kyle Whittingham choosing to return to continue coaching, he is more aware of this than any of us are. There are only 2 things that will change Kyle Whittingham's reputation and legacy at the University of Utah. Everything he's done so far, his longevity, there's now only 2 things that can affect it. Number 1 is winning that championship in another conference, right? Then he would be a Mountain West Conference champion. He would be a Pac-12 conference champion. He would be a Big 12 conference champion. There's only, I think 3 coaches in college football history that have ever done that, won conference championships in 3 different conferences. That would further the legacy that is already created. That would continue the conversation of his true greatness. And, you know, I guess you build a taller podium for the statue at that point, or you make the statue larger than life size because he then wins
2 statues. I don't know.
2 Kyle Whittingham statues.
Mountain West statue, Power 4 statue.
That would be so. James, you just came up with a great idea. Oh my gosh, that would be so fantastic. You do a statue of Kyle Whittingham from the Sugar Bowl year, like how he looked in the Sugar Bowl year, which, by the way, if you look back, he's going to hate that because he was a little bit chubbier back then. That was before he began his undefeated streak of daily workouts. So you build that statue, the younger Kyle Whittingham, and then you build the Pac-12 champion Kyle Whittingham, and then you build whatever he looks like.
National championship.
Hey, there you go. That would be amazing. People that are visiting from out of town are just like, oh, look at these bronze statues out here on this esplanade in front of the stadium. What is this? Okay, who's this guy? Oh, Kyle Wood. Yeah, he's the coach. Okay, that makes sense. Wow, that's from a long time ago. That's from the 2008 season. All right, what's the next one? Let's go over here to this. Oh, this is a statue for 2 different. It's Kyle Whittingham again. It's him again.
He's got a bigger beard.
It's like why is there 2 statues of it? Why is he in better shape when he's older? That doesn't make sense.
He's got a more full beard, and look at that. They put the color in the beard for some reason.
He's a little
put a little gray in there.
His hair's a little longer.
Everything else is bronze, but the beard is gray for some reason.
Like, okay, well, let's go see what this 3rd statue is. Let's walk over here to this 3rd statue, and it's just the Big 12 champion Kyle Whittingham. There you go. That's
more statues.
But the only to be
is
serious,
what it is.
To be serious again, the only thing that can affect Kyle Whittingham's legacy now is either winning at the level that he's supposed to win at or not doing so. Never winning a Big 12 championship, having multiple seasons like you had last year. And national writers, nobody thinks that's going to be the case. Or I shouldn't say nobody. Nobody's an absolute word. Very few people think it's an actual risk for Utah football to be down like they were last year and to stay down. And that is a testament to the reputation that Kyle Whittingham has and what consistency can mean for you in this era of college football. So Bill Connolly says Utah's off to a college football playoff. Spence made the assertion that there's only 2 teams with national championship odds in the Big 12, and it's Kansas State and Utah. And that is true in the sports book he was referencing, I know more degenerate gamblers than he does, I guess. And I was like, look, I'm going to go to DraftKings. That's where a lot of this stuff is happening now. And DraftKings, that's where I got the number I just gave to Josh Furlong. DraftKings has plus 15,000 on the Devin Dampier Heisman Trophy campaign. Same number for Jake Retzloff down at BYU. All right. So if you're looking to take that family vacation to Disney or whatever, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to fund it, Devin Dampier's your guy. Drop $100 down on Devin Dampier. 15,000 is the cash out for that one.
Or if you're a Cougar fan, you can do the same with Jake Retzloff.
Oh, if you're a Cougar fan, you're not allowed to bet.
Well,
you're not allowed to.
You could secretly do the same thing with Jake Retzloff.
You're not allowed to gamble. All right. Now, the other interesting things that I found from DraftKings odds, Arizona State and Kansas State, both plus 9,000 to win a national championship next year. So there is some confidence from the DraftKings bookmakers that the Sun Devils are going to stay where they're at. They're going to continue to compete for conference championships and be in that playoff. Kansas State getting love there for obvious reasons. Colorado plus 10,000 according to DraftKings. So the second highest odds, well, third highest, I guess, behind the two tied teams, would be Colorado at plus 10,000, Utah plus 12,000, Iowa State plus 12,000, BYU plus 15,000. So if you're a BYU Cougar fan, all right, and you're willing to defy the word of wisdom, you can drop $200 at DraftKings, $100 on BYU winning a national championship. And if they do that, they're doing that because Jake Retzloff is a Heisman Trophy candidate. Like, those two things don't happen without one another, right? So you put $100 on Jake Retzloff, you might cash in $30,000 as a BYU fan on a $200 investment. Get rich quick.
Yeah. It's semantics, but it's not quite. It would not quite be a word of wisdom violation, but I think I think we understand. It still is against what it is. It's against what the brethren would advise to gamble. Okay. Yes.
Thank you for the correction. I'm sure I should be a lot more careful about tossing things like that around.
You're all good.
As very much a non-expert.
As someone who sees the emails we get every day, I know that there's someone out there just upset.
Someone's going to be so mad
that you erroneously said it'd be a word of wisdom violation.
The views expressed on this program are mistakes made by me, Sean O'Connell, and not Broadway Media or James Peterson or anyone else. That was my bad. Okay, it's not technically the word of wisdom.
But the spirit of what you were saying is still true. It is against what the counsel of the old brethren of the church.
I affectionately call the word of wisdom the wow factor.
The wow factor. I love that.
Because, word of wisdom.
Yeah, wow.
Spells out wow. The wow factor. It's a little branding tip there for you, for anyone who wants to run with that.
Hey, speaking of branding, real quick, this is coming way out of left field.
I love it.
But when Weddle was talking about QB sneak with Buffalo that was ill-fated, in the AFC Championship game, I wonder what you think of. So Philly's got brotherly shove.
Brotherly shove.
Everywhere else they just say tush push.
Yeah.
Right. Which I don't
this is
love.
Terrible.
I don't love tush push.
The word tush just sucks.
Yeah.
It's a weird word. If you say tush, like if you're over the age of 30 and you say the word tush, you better be saying tush push after it, because if you say tush otherwise, you sound like a creep.
Yeah, it's weird. So I don't love tush push. What do you think about shovel-o with Josh Allen?
Like
the shovel-o.
Like Buffalo, Buffalo shovel-o?
Yeah.
I don't love it. I'm not going to lie.
I was throwing that around at my watch party on Sunday. It was the Andy Bernard thing. I'd laugh about a quarter of the time.
You got to do something. Well, first of all,
nothing rhymes with bills that means push or shove.
Yeah.
So I looked it up just to see.
You looked it up? James Peterson's Google search history is hilarious. Just like, what?
Yeah, we don't need to talk about what I Googled yesterday on the work computer.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. In any case,
you as my boss made me Google.
Yes,
by the way.
I was your boss at that time, so I am the one who's liable for it.
Shovel-o.
It's
going to be a thing. OC.
We're never going to be. You're not going to make fetch happen. Okay, I'm sorry. That one is throw it on the pile of deceased ideas. There's been so many here on the show.
Shovel it over.
Okay. I see what you're trying to do. I don't like it one bit. But the Big 12 football team national championship odds, again, inspired by Spence Checketts, who just came in yesterday and was just like Oprah's favorite things, just this number and these guys are this. I was like, all right, I'm going to go check this out. DraftKings says ASU, Kansas State, Colorado all have higher national championship odds than the University of Utah, and all four of those teams higher than BYU. But Mark Schlabach from ESPN, his way too early, had BYU being the Big 12 representative in the college football playoff. And then, of course, Bill Connolly came out. Did I say Bill Schlabach?
Oh, you got Mark's name right. Yeah.
Mark, I never know. Bill Connolly came out and he said,
You're cooking. I'm letting you cook.
This is going to be Utah bouncing back, and that is the bar. That's where expectations are set for the University of Utah. That's what people want from you. That's why Kyle Whittingham decided to come back. Defensively, the talent that you bring back, if you can add some depth, if you can develop some depth, I feel like you're in a pretty good spot defensively. I'd like to see the D-line, which is traditionally a position of strength. I'd like to see something added there. I'd like to have some more confidence coming out of spring ball that position is going to be okay. But defensively, I like what you've got. Offensively, I'm optimistic about Devin Dampier and his plus 15,000 Heisman Trophy odds. But there's some heavy lifting to be done with the quarterback position, answering that question, and then, of course, a running back room that is all new. Still, at least one expert, as I throw up the air quotes, at least one expert thinks that Utah is the Big 12 champion and is off to a college football playoff. DraftKings says even if that happens, they're a long shot to win a national championship. And I don't think you're going to find any reasonable fan who disagrees with that, especially after what we've seen from Ohio State and Oregon and the way that they just throw money at their rosters. All right, got to take a break here. We'll start hour number 2 with the Utah football legend Scott Mitchell. Talk a little bit more about this AFC and NFC championship weekend. We'll throw some of this Utah football news at him. Scott Mitchell next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Coming up in about 20 minutes, we're going to talk about the greatest statistical outliers in sports. Victor Wembanyama is starting to build a case for his own freakishness. I'll give you a number about him, and then we'll explore some of the historical statistical outliers that are downright comical, if we get honest about it. Before we get there, time to talk with Scott Mitchell, Utah football legend. Part of our Big 12 at Noon coverage brought to you by Mountainland Supply. Visit mountainlandsupply.com or stop by any of their physical locations. Scott Mitchell, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Statistical outliers is like my mantra. That's how I live my life.
You try to be a statistical outlier?
Exactly. Yeah.
What stat are you? What's like your statistical outlier stat? Like for me, it's like I can eat more Oreo cookies than probably most of the human population. I'm a statistical outlier in that regard. You might actually have an athletic accomplishment that falls into this.
Well, actually, I'll have to think about it. That's the one thing. You put me on the spot. Sorry, can't come up with something.
That's fine. Well,
my bad.
Think of it while we talk.
That's my statistical outlier. I don't know anything. I can't come up with anything there.
No one is worse on the spot than Scott Mitchell. That's his statistical outlier. All right, let's talk a little Utah football. Let's talk a little NFL football. You're an expert on both of these things. I've been having a little bit of fun with this one today. Spence came in with some way too early stuff yesterday and some odds in the sports books on who has championship odds in the Big 12 Conference. I stumbled across a Heisman Trophy winning number for, if you want to place a bet on Devin Dampier as he makes his debut for Utah football this year. Knock on wood, he stays healthy and is able to do so, obviously. He's plus 15,000 to win the Heisman Trophy. That's like, I don't know, like he's like 25th or 30th in the country. He's tied with Jake Retzlaff, the BYU quarterback down there. Look, you put a number next to a guy like him because it doesn't seem achievable. But Cam Ward was once a quarterback at Incarnate Word, and he ended up as a Heisman Trophy finalist. And I wonder what you think of an individual award, the ceiling for somebody like Devin Dampier, with Heisman, of course, probably not being super realistic.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a tough one, just because of the nature of how Utah will run its offense. He'll have a big impact on what happens. Where like he'll probably score a lot of touchdowns running. He'll probably throw a lot less throwing. I mean, you just kind of look at what he did at New Mexico and just maybe exaggerate it just a little bit, expand it maybe a little bit. He's going to be on a better team, have better players. He's a year older, but you need someone to really, do something spectacular, something that's like really big to catch people's attention. And I just don't know that by the nature of how Utah does stuff, you really go, yeah, that they're going to have a guy that really gets after. Even Retzlaff at BYU, it's kind of similar. Their offenses, he may have more of a chance because, they have LJ Martin, but it's just really hard when you're kind of a balanced team like that. And let's face it, you're in the Big 12 Conference. That's just not going to get the love and attention and eyeballs because the Heisman is as much about promotion and awareness as it is, your actual season. I mean, it's like it's who gets recognized early, who has this big moment game, this Heisman moment. And I don't know that Utah's in a conference or in a position to where they can do that. Doesn't mean that they're going to not be good or he's going to be good, but those individual awards, it's tough.
We also had
go back to when I was there, Sean, when we threw the ball about 700 times a game, and you have these, that's when you get considered for the Heisman.
We also had a little bit of fun talking about Bill Connolly, one of the ESPN insiders, did his way too early college football playoff projections, and he has Utah winning the Big 12 Conference and making it to a college football playoff next year. And obviously, that's an exciting prospect for every Utah football fan out there. The expectation in the Pac-12 got to that point, and unfortunately this year did not live up to that expectation on the football front because of injury for the most part. Knowing the pieces that are in place and how hopefully unlikely it is that you're bit that badly by an injury bug 2-3 years in a row, is this where the expectation should sit for Utah football, that they're back on top of the Big 12 conference immediately?
When every season ends, after broadcast a season, you take a little bit of time away from things and you start to evaluate who's there, who isn't there, who could potentially be there next year. And the thing that I noticed and feel after doing that is the defense is going to be good again next year. Might be better than this year. And I thought Utah's defense was exceptional. Probably the best all-around defense in the conference. They certainly have talent that at every position, the D-line, the linebackers, and the secondary. I just think they're going to be really good. There's some guys that, started to emerge that are kind of those replacement, players. And, you may have, like Smith Snowden, he may move to a different position. Rabbit Evans. You have Jonah Hall, who probably be a really good linebacker next year. I think Leonard Barton will be healthy next year. It's to me, and the one spot defensively was like a rush edge guy that just was disruptive, and I don't know that they really had that. They had the potential of it last year with Connor O'Toole, but he just couldn't stay healthy. So I looked at it like this defense is good, and it's going to be as good, if not better, because it's just what they do. Morgan Scalley goes, come on, do you guys not have enough confidence in us that we've done this enough to know how to reload the gun? And they do, and they do it pretty much every year. And so if you can be just a little bit better offensively, I mean, because the games Utah lost last year, they weren't getting blown out. They just were a team that just couldn't do enough offensively to win football games. I mean, really every game last year that Utah lost, other than Colorado, they were there. And I think they were even there with Colorado. It kind of got away from them at the end of the game. So you play just a little bit better offensively, and I think that Utah has the potential to play a lot better offensively. And yeah, I wouldn't, I'm not thinking that prediction or that early pick is really out of the question. The question is the Big 12 is always a question. It's always, someone comes out of the ashes. Someone comes from Arizona State, and you go, huh? They won it? And it just seems to be a pattern that, and it does because the conference is so well balanced as far as the talent. So Texas Tech had an amazing year in the portal. And even though you have an amazing year in the portal, it still doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be great, because you still got to get all those guys to play well. Cam Ward is actually a good example. It took him a little bit of time to develop into the player he was and is now. And so even though you get these talented players, they still have to develop. They still have to get comfortable in your systems. And that's no different for Utah. But I think if they can play pretty, and it looks like they've got it going in the right direction with how they want to do their offense, that, this team absolutely can be there this year.
Scott Mitchell, my guest here, talking a little Utah football. We'll get to some NFL stuff as well on the Sean O'Connell Show. The NFL playoffs are down to a Super Bowl matchup now. Kansas City Chiefs have an opportunity to go 3 Super Bowl wins back to back to back. That would be history. No one's ever done that before in a league where there's been some great dynasties. There's been some great teams. We played for some of these franchises. They could set themselves apart as being the only team in 2025 that goes back to back to back. Put into context, if you can, as someone who knows how hard it is to be that consistent at that elite level, how meaningful it would be and how impressive it would be if they're able to go 3 in a row.
Well, I was looking at a stat a few days ago, and it listed all the teams that have won Super Bowls and like the number of Super Bowls. And then there was this whole pool of teams that in the whole time of the Super Bowl, how many years are we? 59.
Yeah, 59
years. That they haven't even won a Super Bowl. Like, and it's not like one or two teams. I mean, there's one or two teams that have even never been to the Super Bowl, but there's a large chunk of teams that have never even won it. And to go that long and not have success, it really is a brutally hard thing to do. And there's only out of 32 teams, there's one a year that does it. So statistically, maybe you should go play the lottery and have better odds than winning a Super Bowl. And then you factor in, there's when I was playing, the 49ers were good and some of these other teams were good, and they played in really bad divisions. And so they even had that going for them where they're, and the AFC West typically is a pretty tough division, but it's, it got a little bit more competitive but it hasn't really been overly competitive. Denver, the Raiders, the Chargers haven't really been super competitive. This year they maybe got a little bit better. So to have that kind of easy ride through your division sometimes gives you a little lift. It helps you out. You get a coach who is just at his prime and understands the game so well, and he has a quarterback who understands it like he does. I mean, it's a cool thing, and you see this with the Chiefs all the time. Is there's so much on the same page with the coaches, with the players, and with the execution of things, and it's really a cool thing to watch, and that takes time. It takes time and experience. I mean, you go through a season where you have to win 17 games by one score or less. You're a pressure performer, so none of this is new to you. And I almost feel like all the pressure's off Kansas City because they're just house money. Like, the whole thing is off Andy Reid's back about can he win the Super Bowl? Can he get to the Super Bowl? And they've won multiple championships. And it's, so they're really, this isn't like, oh my goodness, we're going to three-peat, and that's, it'd be incredible, and they probably will do it, but it won't be because they folded or the pressure was too big for them. And so to get everything in place, because it's so many different components, and they've had to figure out how to win differently than when they won early with Patrick Mahomes. And so getting the right quarterback, the right system, the right players, keeping people healthy, your defense plays better. You pick up some really key acquisitions through trades and free agency, and you just strike, gold. It's just hard to do because so many things can go wrong. So many more things can go wrong than you can go right ever. I mean, you look at Detroit, probably the best team in the NFL, and they just had injury after injury after injury on that defense, and it finally caught up with them. And so it's brutally hard to win in the NFL, and so to see someone like Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs get at the, to do it like 3 times in a row, and then the other part of it, Sean, that is so important. And I think what players say why it's so hard to repeat, let alone three-peat, is that everybody's gunning for you. Everybody hates you. You're always getting the very best shot from people. There's never a break. There's never a moment to breathe. And it's just really, really hard to win it a second time and to win it a consecutive time, let alone a third time. And so what they're doing is one of the harder, if not the most hard feats in all of sports as it relates to a team. There are just not many teams in any sport that have done this.
Where do you come down on the they get all the right calls, the referees favor them, especially Patrick Mahomes? It is a narrative that perpetuates itself across all sports, especially when one player, or in the NBA case, it's like 5 or 6 players really emerge as like the torch carriers for the branding and things like that. And it plagues this Chiefs team. I don't think it's totally without merit. Obviously, the game is somewhat different when Patrick Mahomes is going for a slide or running out of bounds than when it's Lamar Jackson. But you played the position. So where do you come down on that?
So as far as officiating and is it biased and is the NFL trying to, rig the game or whatever? I'll just go back to something. I was on a reality TV show. I had to sign a 45-page contract, and if I told anybody what I was doing, where I was, anything that was happening while I was on this reality TV show, they would fine me $1.5 million. And the reason is that it's the element of surprise is why people tune in to reality TV. And the integrity of the NFL, that the games that people know, these games are not predetermined, that this is the element of surprise. Tune in. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to throw these two teams together and something's going to happen. And if the NFL does not have that element, if they don't have that surprise, no one's going to watch. If everyone thinks and believes that the league is rigging the officials and trying to make it for the Kansas City Chiefs, their business is over. So the NFL never in a million years is going to tell an official, encourage an official about cheating or favoring a certain team. Now, the NFL is going to promote teams. They're going to promote the heck out of Taylor Swift and the Kansas City Chiefs and whoever is hot, whoever will bring eyeballs. They'll promote the heck out of a very average Dallas Cowboy team or a really sucky team in New York because they're the biggest markets in the country and they have the most interest. And they know even if these teams are bad, they're still gonna have people that tune in. So from a marketing perspective, they're going to be biased. They're going to try to promote and guys who are really good may be left out of the cold because they don't fit the narrative. When I was with the Detroit Lions, I threw for 410 yards and 5 touchdown passes on a Thanksgiving game, and all the media reported was how Barry Sanders led the Lions to victory, and he had no out. But it's about promoting your product and the people that are going to get that you're going to get the most bang for your buck for, but they will not cheat. And now an official. And those officials are scrutinized. I mean, guys lose their job. If they make bad calls and continue to make bad calls, they're out. And from an officiating standpoint, I trust NFL officials to get it right more than any other league. I'll tell you, they'll never get it 100% right. They just won't because they're human beings. And being human, you can't help but they're sports fans. These guys, you think they're not enamored with Patrick Mahomes or Andy Reid or whomever? Absolutely. So subconsciously, do they have maybe a bias on a play from here or there? It's impossible not to. It's impossible to be partial. And it can work for you. It can work against you. But to some degree, that exists. And it just exists because we're human. And so you're not going to get away from the bias, but it certainly isn't coming from the NFL to cheat. And so these officials, and they have to make a decision in the heat of the moment, and they only get to see it once. They see it when it happens. And if their eyes are just not completely focused or they're off just a little bit, they may miss something. They don't get the chance to go back and look at it. And so, and they also, as a viewer, we're an expanded view. Like they got their nose under the hood of the car, and it's a different perspective when you're right there on the field as an official. So it's always been that way. I mean, when I played for the Miami Dolphins and Coach Shula was on the competition committee, and every team we played complained that, Shula gets all the calls because he's the guy. And I never felt like that when I played for Coach Shula, like we got some fair advantage. And so, yeah, does it exist to some degree, but it's not through the NFL. I can guarantee you that.
All right. Before I let you go, there's a lot of Raider fans here in the state, and Pete Carroll's a name we're all very familiar with. Most of us have watched his career at least since he was at USC, and obviously he had a lot of success at the NFL level as well. Pete Carroll to the Raiders, what do you think?
I absolutely love it. Pete Carroll is the guy that, he just knows how to win. You get these guys, these Sean Paytons, these Andy Reids, these guys that have proven in multiple places where they can win. And if there's he's an old coach, but he's a young old coach. I mean, Pete Carroll's a spry guy. He probably coached like as long as Joe Paterno coached. He's kind of got that body, that health, that physicalness to him that he can last a long time. He's a guy that can bring some sanity to maybe the Raiders, and I love the pick. I mean, if I was a player today, I'd want to play for Pete Carroll. I'd want to play for Andy Reid. I'd probably want to play for Sean Payton. I mean, those are the guys that I definitely would want to play for these days, and they should be excited in that org. And believe it or not, I actually would want to play for Jim Harbaugh. But that's a different story and a whole different discussion. I love his attitude. I love his insight, kind of his mantra about how he is a coach. He's more, I was coached by some tough people. Coach Shula was hard, he was hard-nosed. And I love that kind of gentler side, but very fiercely competitive person that Pete Carroll is. And so, yeah, I'm excited for the Raiders and to see what he can do there.
Yeah, going to be fun to see how that one plays out. And obviously we'll be checking in with Scott Mitchell very frequently as the football season. There's no such thing as an off season. Spring ball right around the corner. Scott, always appreciate you. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Sean.
Scott Mitchell, Utah football legend, longtime NFL veteran, played the quarterback position at a high level for years and years and years. And you can hear him on all Utah football radio broadcasts as the color analyst. He'll be filling in on days when I'm off. He filled in for me last week. He'll be filling in the future for both myself and I think for Spence Checketts. So glad to have Scott on board over here at ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, your home of the Utes and Utah's #1 sports talk. All right, there's Victor Wembanyama is starting to pull away from the field in one particular NBA stat, so we're going to talk about that and look at some of the greatest statistical outliers in all of sport because the numbers do get really, really crazy. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Time for you to take your chance to see a Runnin' Utes home game. Text Utes to 33986 to win a pair of tickets. Next home game coming up soon. Utes to 33986 to win a pair of tickets to a Runnin' Utes basketball game. Getting ready to prepare for a show today, and I saw a graphic come up. Love me a good television graphic about Victor Wembanyama's shot blocking this year. He's got 150 block shots so far in this NBA season. Great number for Victor Wembanyama. He's built for it, so it makes sense. Do you know who second place is right now, James Peterson?
I do not. Rudy Gobert?
Rudy's not there. He's
okay.
Rudy's actually not having a super spectacular year on the shot blocking.
Okay.
Victor Wembanyama's got 150 blocks. Anthony Davis is in second place, and he's got 90. I think he had 3 last night, actually, to move him into that number 90. So, I mean, look, Victor Wembanyama, not quite doubling the production of the nearest guy, but he's well above the competition, I guess literally and figuratively, since we're talking shot blocking. See what I did there?
I like it.
So a statistical outlier that we're seeing it kind of play out right in front of us. He's got 150. Walker Kessler, by the way, right now, 4th in the NBA with 85 blocked shots. So good work by the young man who's really starting to build a name for himself here in Salt Lake City. It goes Victor Wembanyama, Anthony Davis, Brook Lopez, Walker Kessler, Miles Turner. Rudy Gobert has 67 blocked shots, good for number 8 in the NBA right now.
Nothing wrong with top 10.
Nothing wrong with
Go
top
Rudy.
10. Good job, Rudy, I guess. Sure.
But it feels like it's Wemby's award to lose as far as defensive player of the year this year.
He's also good, active with his hands. He's good at poking balls away. He's good at creating steals. He's good at stealing the ball himself.
He doesn't get cooked whenever he's switched on to a perimeter player. He's awesome on defense.
He's an awesome basketball player all around. Gordy and I talk about him every single time.
Because you have to. He's amazing. How do you ignore this guy?
He's spectacular, and he's the future of the NBA, and everyone's going to be looking for the next one. Human beings are going to be looking for the next one because he's just such an outlier. Anyway, so and I think that you extrapolate that number out over the course of an NBA career. That outliers. And I asked people on Twitter to give me their favorite statistical stat outliers. A couple of folks obliged quite nicely. And some of them, like John Stockton, absolutely obliterates the nearest assists and steals record, right? The best one in all of sports might be one that was brought in by one of our tweeters, Wayne Gretzky. I'm sure the hardcore Utah hockey fans, because we're now a hockey market, I'm sure everybody knew this already, but they call him the Great One. Wayne Gretzky would be
understatement,
the all-time,
by the way, the Great One. Total understatement. Because of that, especially based on the stat you're just about to bring up.
He's freakish, right? Wayne Gretzky would be the all-time NHL points leader. You get points for goals scored or assists. He'd be the all-time points leader if he never scored a goal. If he had 0 goals in his career, he'd still be the all-time points leader.
Ovechkin's he's closing in on his goals record, but he's still thousands behind in career points, if I'm not mistaken, because of the number of assists that Gretzky got. And hockey assists, the guy who assisted the assister also gets credit for the assists, so that's part of why you can compile a lot in assists, but still.
Yes, but everyone's been operating under that same rule set,
true.
And nobody has Wayne Gretzky numbers. His assist number is 1,963 assists. Just his assist number. The total points runner-up is Jaromir Jagr, who I am totally fascinated by because when you talk about longevity, this guy is still playing professional hockey in his 50s. Now he's doing it in like a third-tier league.
But he was, 45 when he stopped playing NHL?
I think he was like 48. Yeah,
48?
He's unbelievable, right? Jaromir Jagr, also, the stories about his personal life, very legendary. The guy's just a wild man, right?
A great sports name, too, Jaromir Jagr.
1,921 total points. His goals and his assists combined are still, 42 shy of Gretzky's assists, just
the assists.
And by the way, Jagr ended up playing 250 more games in his NHL career than Wayne Gretzky did. So
Gretzky's points per season way higher than everyone else too.
Mark Messier, Gordie Howe, these guys have incredible longevity, by the way. All of these guys played 200 plus more games than Wayne Gretzky and still are well behind him in total points. Now, I'm just talking about his assists, by the way. Total points, 894 goals plus 1,963 assists, 2,857 Wayne Gretzky points. Jaromir Jagr is second with 1,921. To put it in perspective for the modern game, what you're seeing guys who are currently active, Sidney Crosby, his whole career he's played with Pittsburgh, 1,649. 1,649. So he's more than 1,200 points behind Wayne Gretzky. Alex Ovechkin is even further behind. He's got 1,584 points, and that's with an insane number of goals.
Yeah, he's like I said, he's about to be the first one to get to 900 goals. Or a good chance to.
And he can't touch the assist numbers. He's got 709 assists to Gretzky's 1,963. And he's been playing almost 20 years in the league.
Yeah.
So that is a statistical outlier that I thought was worth bringing up.
Probably the biggest in all of sports. I got one. I got a Utah Jazz one that's not John Stockton assist or steals related.
Okay. That's actually, what would it be?
Do you have a guess?
No.
Okay. Blocks per game.
Okay.
Single season record is held by Mark Eaton.
I was going to say Mark Eaton. If it's blocks, it's got to be Mark Eaton.
He set it in 1985.
Okay.
1984-85 season. 5.56. So 5.6 if you round it up. The next highest,
five and a half, 6
a game in the 84-85 season. Who next highest number is not in the fives. If you round up, it's 5 even. 4.96 Manute Bol. So let me tell you how big an outlier that is. That's about 0.6 of a block shy of Mark Eaton's record.
Wow.
The next numbers 2 through 7 are numbers 2 through 9 are about 0.6 of a block shy. There's 0.6 of a block separating numbers 2 through 9 in the blocks per game all-time standings, if you will, all-time records. So, and Mark Eaton, that's the lead he has on Manute Bol from 1 to 2. 5.6 blocks a game in 85. That is probably a record that will never be broken.
The wild thing about it is, right, is you're not just talking about how far these people are outliers from the average population. This is from the other best in the world at their profession.
Manute Bol, who is that's all he really did was block shots.
Yeah, he was 7'7".
You could say the same. You could say the same thing about Mark Eaton. That was really their main skill, and he's still not even close. So number 2 is Manute Bol at about 5. And then number 9 is also Manute Bol, just so happens to be Manute Bol at 4.3. So that's the same deficit as what's between he and Mark Eaton's mark at 1 and 2. I mean, that's quite the outlier.
Another one that came in, and this one is a really good one as a statistical outlier, and we've talked – the superlatives you could throw about Wilt Chamberlain are just – it's outrageous. In the 1961-1962 NBA basketball season, he averaged 50 points and 23 rebounds a game. Career nights.
And that he had the 100-point game in that season.
And he had a 100-point game. Just career nights every single night for average players. He was, when you talk about true outliers, I mean, Wilt Chamberlain was something at that time that professional athletics, that the world had not really ever seen. Someone that size who moved like that. Now we still don't take it for granted because we're still, I think, amazed by, like the Shaquille O'Neal's. His career was like a guy that size moving like that is crazy to see. There's some guys, a lot of guys, most of the guys in the NFL actually, at least that play on the lines. You look at them, you're just like, you're not supposed to be able to move like that. Because we've seen big people and we've seen athletic people, and when you put those in the same body, it really kind of defies your expectations as a human.
To see, yeah.
But we've seen it now, right? We've televised sports for decades. And Wilt Chamberlain was a guy that, like, most folks had not seen someone that was wandering around at 7 feet tall, and not a guy like that who was able to run like a deer, who could jump out of a gym. Like, he was a freak of freaks. He would still be a freak in today's NBA. And I don't know if you call it evolution or human development or strength and conditioning or better nutrition or whatever, but like, we have the numbers that show us that athletes get better generation after generation, and he was like 5 generations early.
He was
wild.
Yeah, his whole career is an outlier. Other than the team success, he had some, but not like Bill Russell is the team success outlier. 11 championships in 13 years, but Wilt had all the other outliers statistically, right? And every time Gordy does a top 10 list of career whatever, especially when it comes to scoring, it's always Wilt Chamberlain at the top. Like, we all laugh because he's like, okay, most 50-point games. Well, Michael Jordan's number 2. Well, we all know who's number 1, and he's got like 300 more.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Tiger Woods,
yeah,
142 consecutive cuts made. You talk about consistency in a game where there could be any assortment of reasons why you would miss the cut, why you just didn't, like, a healthy Tiger Woods. If his body hadn't fallen apart, Tiger Woods, I mean, he's already at the top of all the record books. If his body hadn't fallen apart on him, who knows what his numbers would look like. That's a big-time statistical outlier. You can go, there's actually a bunch of really great threads about this. I went down a rabbit hole about Michael Phelps and his 20 Olympic gold medals and just what that means, that he won 20 Olympic gold medals, and you start getting into the freakishness of his build and how it seems like he was like engineered in a lab to be a great swimmer. Usain Bolt's speed is one of the great statistical outliers that we've ever seen in athletics. We have a less appreciation for it because of his, his sport being less prominent. Like, when someone reduces their own times, beats their own times by like 1/10 of a second, if you're not really deeply involved in track and field, you have a harder time appreciating what 1/10 of a second at the elite level really means. Like how much distance that puts between you and the next person. So fun to go watch some of that. If you have time you want to waste on statistical sports outliers, there's been some wild ones. And we talked about one all football season long in college football. Barry Sanders' record-setting season at Oklahoma State was a big-time statistical outlier, especially when you consider the way stats were kept, and he wasn't even given credit for the bowl performance with 200-plus yards in that bowl game. So he was an unreal statistical outlier and still is, what are we now, 30, 40 years after his college career? 30 years after his college career?
Yeah. Another one that I think needs to be mentioned is Roger Federer from 2003 through 2009, really, but his record in Grand Slam finals from 03 to 07, 12-2. The only ones he lost, French Opens to Rafa Nadal, who never lost French Opens, right? Like Federer was. We talk about Tiger Woods as maybe the most dominant of anybody in an individual sport. Federer was even more dominant record-wise for about 6-7 years in pro tennis.
Well, the greatest individual male athlete in history is Cale Sanderson from the state of Utah. 189-0 as a collegiate wrestler. 4-time All-American, 4-time national champion, Olympic gold medalist as well. Like, to have that stretch against elite competition and be undefeated at a little old Heber, Utah, and Wasatch High School, it's about the coolest thing ever. And now he's a phenomenal coach. He's the best coach in the land as well. So as far as a local outlier, that's the one. Right? I wouldn't say just even local. Like,
well, for a local guy who's an outlier in their sport.
You talk about an American, like Tiger Woods, awesome. Michael Phelps, probably the one that you could hold up and say, well, he won 20-something gold medals. Cale won a single gold medal. But to be a collegiate elite athlete, you're at the very, very top of your sport in the United States of America, and you go undefeated over the course of your entire career.
Yeah, never losing.
You can't even draw an equivalent to that in team sports because it's just not possible.
It's like when Dan Patrick had Joe Montana on, I think, last year, probably before the Super Bowl, and he asked him, like, what's the pain of losing at the highest level? He's like, I don't know. I won every Super Bowl. So it's like you can't ask Cale Sanderson that question. What's the pain of losing? Yeah, I'm the wrong guy.
Can't relate. Ask somebody else. I actually have no idea. And he still has very little idea.
It's not even a brag. It's just that's fact.
The scariest thing is when you hear stories from like the Olympic cycle, right? Because he did win a gold medal, but then there's all these conversations that happen about like the internationally elite wrestlers and these guys who come out of like the Republic of Georgia and Turkey and all these places, and these Russian wrestlers who guys will tell you like that guy came in and he whooped Cale Sanderson, destroyed that guy. You're like, how? That's not even – I've watched plenty of Cale Sanderson matches, and it is one-way traffic. The idea that someone could be better than him is, like, unfathomable, and yet the record is out there. He's lost, you know? There's a guy who I called one of his fights who beat Cale Sanderson, Yoel Romero, a Cuban wrestler who then became an MMA fighter who beat Cale. And I'm just like, how? Yeah. How did you beat it? And then you look at him, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah. He's built like a pit bull.
He's giant.
His neck, I'm not exaggerating when I say that his neck is bigger around than his head. Like, you remember the NFL linebacker Takeo Spikes?
Yeah.
He did a little television work. I think the reason they had him stop doing TV work is because he was so odd looking because his neck stuck out further than his ears.
Yeah.
And I think people are just like put off by it. He's a good analyst.
I think he was on TNT's pregame for their first round college football playoff games. I think he was.
Okay. Well, Takeo Spikes, I don't know if he's still doing that neck workout, but he legitimately has an almost like uncomfortable appearance because his neck is so big. Anyway. We got off on a little bit of a tangent there. Jeff Schwartz is going to join us to talk about the NFL playoffs, the Super Bowl matchup being set. We're going to double break here because I've abused the clock quite aggressively. You're listening to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, Bill Fraser joins us in 27 minutes to talk a little Utah Hockey Club. They're back in action. They got a game, They got Friday as well and Sunday. Penguins tonight. Before we get there, we're going to talk some football with my good friend, former Oregon Duck, longtime NFL veteran, and occasional gambling degenerate, Jeff Schwartz. Jeff, how are you?
You didn't bring me on to talk Utah Hockey Club? I thought that's why I was here. We're talking football?
We could talk Utah Hockey Club if you want.
I'm fine. Sean, I have a question for you. So yesterday I couldn't make it, obviously. The reason I couldn't make it was I was at a plastic surgeon who specializes in hair transplants because my wife has this obsession that my hair is thinning. What's the call here? Like, do I go through with it? Do I just like let it ride? Like, what would you do? You've seen me. I got a decent amount of hair. It's thinning a little bit, but like this feels a little aggressive.
Well, here's the thing. I think you let it ride. I thought that was like aging with dignity and just being like,
yeah.
You get older and you just got to do it gracefully if you can. I thought that was the stance. I get the same thing from my wife, not about my hair. My hair, thankfully, is holding up decently well, although I guess the hairline, the corners retreat just occasionally.
Yeah, my alleys are going back a little bit. Yeah, it's the alleys.
But it's more like the testosterone replacement thing.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's just like, hey, well, when are you going to start? And I'm like, well, and then my pushback is, well, I don't want to do any of that if we're still in our fertility window. If I want to have more kids. She doesn't seem to be super excited about that possibility. But I'm just like I got to make sure that, we're closing up shop there before I even consider pumping a bunch of juice into myself or whatever. But she's like not so casual about being like, well, you should get on that stuff, which I think is the equivalent of a man going to his wife or going to his significant other or going to a woman and just being like, hey, I think maybe you should lose some weight. It's like the same thing.
It's the same thing, yeah. But it's appropriate for her to do it. If you did it, it'd be inappropriate.
Yeah. If I would never consider doing that. I don't think she needs to. But like, if I said something like that, I would wake up with a knife in my neck, and she's just like, yeah, I think you need to be a little bit more manly. You need to start getting on the testosterone. So I think it's the same thing happening to you. And as much as I love your wife, who I've never actually met in person, but I've had years and years of incredible stories about, like, I think she needs to take a back seat on this one. If you're fine with how the hair looks, that's what matters.
She also told me to get Botox because I do all the stuff on camera now, and she's like, your face wrinkles when you talk. I go,
yes.
So
your face is supposed to move when you speak.
I'm like, so what? My face, like, I don't know what you. I'm 38 years old. I'm a former NFL offensive lineman. Like, what am I supposed to look like? What you want?
Amazing.
All the things in life she's focused about is like my hair and my Botox appearance, my forehead. Oh. Nothing else. Doesn't listen to anything I do, but just cares deeply about what I look like.
Get some Botox. Okay, yeah. I love it. All right, let's talk a little foosball if you don't mind. We've got a Super Bowl matchup now: the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't want to give you too much space to gush about the Chiefs because you're prone to do that anyway. I do want to pick your brain about Philadelphia, and we've talked about this the last few weeks. They're just, even when they have to shuffle things around personnel-wise on that offensive line, they're just blowing holes open. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is the benefit of really just having a couple of things. One is just a reliable scheme, right? They have Saquon, which certainly helps, but they just have a reliable run game, right? And then coaching. Look, Jeff Stoutland has been the coach there for many, many years. He is one of the best, if not the best in the NFL. I mean, think about the way they built their offensive line. Now, Lane Johnson was the first draft pick of his. Now, if you recall, Jeff Stoutland, Chip Kelly hired him in 2013. He's a Chip Kelly guy. And he's made it through all these coaches. I mean, that's how good he is, that he's managed to survive with all these coaches. But Lane Johnson was his first guy. It's a first-round pick. You have Mekhi Becton at right guard, who was a first-round pick, but basically was forgotten about coming from the Jets, right? He was sort of a cast-off. He didn't play well in New York and was injured a bunch. And you see what him – I think Juergens, the center, is a second-round pick, and obviously replaced Jason Kelce, who was a fifth-round pick. And you look at Dickerson, who was drafted lower than he should have been because he was hurt. And then the gem is, Mulata played rugby his whole life. He never touched a football, played football until later in life, really until he was drafted by the Eagles, the NFL International Program, right? And so you look at that combination, you add in Tyler Stein, who played with injury the other day, and it's coaching, it's scheme, it's all the above. Sean, it's super impressive. They had basically two guys hurt last week, right? You had your center who was hurt, and then you had basically the left guard who then played center got hurt as well in the game, and they still managed to do a good job. Now, look, obviously, it'd be naive to say that having Saquon Barkley doesn't help all of this because he's incredible, and he can just make you look really, really good at times. But it's still a lot of it's coaching, a lot of it's scheme, a lot of it's preparation, and they get a lot of credit for that. They do this for years now, right? It's not the same offensive line they won with in 2017. It's a couple of maybe just one of the same guys from the last. No, Mulata was it. So Mulata so it's two of the same guys. So they keep kind of finding new iterations of the offensive line too.
Yeah, it's impressive, and obviously it helps when you have a quarterback with some athleticism and mobility, and when you have the best running back in the NFL. And, of course, chicken and egg, you look like you're the best running back in the NFL when you're running behind the best offensive line. But clearly Saquon is a guy with a considerable amount of ability and vision and, contact balance and all these great things. Is this a perfect enough offensive machine to get them over the hump against the Chiefs, though?
I think they can move the ball in Kansas City. The Chiefs are going to try to stop the run like everyone does, right? I mean, that's the sort of the path to making, you probably want Jalen Hurts to try to beat you with his arm, and you have to do that by winning first down. You make first down 2nd and 9, and then you have to end up, maybe pass the ball a little bit more. That's always a thing that you want to do, because I think like Eagles, what makes the Eagles so tough, it's not Saquon, who's incredible, obviously we know that. It's that that you have to defend them for 4 downs a lot of times, right, Sean? Because it's 3rd and 3, man. They got 2 downs to get 3 yards because they're going to go for it on 4th down all the time, and they're going for it if it's 4th and 2 and less with a highly efficient play in that tush push. I mean, the Chiefs stopped the Bills a couple times on tush push, but mostly no one stops the Eagles on any tush pushes, right? I mean, they're so good at that. So it just makes defending them much, much harder when you have many different ways to get out of issues. And that's what the Eagles do. So it's just it's a complete sort of team effort to get this done. And so the Chiefs have the personnel to do so. And I think, their best quality, we talk about sort of how to win in the NFL, they just have these moments that they always win in these big games. And so it might not be a great run defense for most of the game. And then all of a sudden, Sean, when it's time to have a good run defense, it shows up all of a sudden. It's what the Kansas City Chiefs do.
Where do you stand on Hurts? I've been impressed with how he's played, especially in these playoffs. And I don't know where folks have him ranked in the pantheon of current NFL quarterbacks, but he's doing what he needs to do to get his team through this playoff and to a Super
Bowl. I guess the question I kind of throw back to you, like, I think he's good. Is he great? I don't think so. But he doesn't have to be because he's not the entire offense. If it becomes a Jalen Hurts game, I don't know if that's like what I want, where I certainly would be very much okay with Patrick Mahomes being a Patrick Mahomes game, right, Sean? Like, I think that's the difference, right? It's like your Patrick Mahomes game, you're like, sign me up for that one. If there's a weakness on Philly, it's the passing game, but sometimes it's not really his fault. I mean, guys are not open. It's been a little bit of an issue at times this season, especially in a little bit in the postseason, where just guys are not open. It's not really his fault. The Rams game, A.J. Brown dropped 2 passes. You catch those 2 passes, and we probably feel a lot differently about the passing game. I think what makes Hurts so special in these moments, though, is there's just no panic in him, right? Even like post-game, he's just so calm and chill, and that goes a long way in being successful. I think that he's never too high or too low. And we see that in these big moments where nothing phases them, and that's a big reason for success. And run the football obviously is a huge part of what they do. It sets him apart from other quarterbacks. It's not he's not as explosive as Lamar Jackson, but I'll tell you what, man, he gets the job done. Whenever he runs the football, there's yards to be had.
Yeah, I ran a poll, I don't know, last week, maybe the week before, about what stat people lean on to evaluate quarterbacks. Like, what stat do you care most about when you're trying to decide where a guy stands? And, there's like your touchdown interception ratio, there's your completion percentage, there's the quarterback rating, which of course is supposed to take all of them into account. And I pulled up like all the top guys in the NFL, and Jalen Hurts is like, he's right there. He's got a really healthy touchdown interception.
Yeah.
He's got a really healthy completion percentage. He hasn't had a crazy number of yards. He's a more active runner, a more efficient runner than a lot of these quarterbacks are. He's not talked about in the same conversation as Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and maybe he shouldn't be. But even when like Stafford was still in the playoffs, you weren't talking about Jalen Hurts on that level. And it was like, well, what does he have to do? Whatever it is, he's doing it right now, and that's what impresses me. He knows what his team is, and he knows, I think, his role on the team. And even if that's not to be the Patrick Mahomes guy, to your point, it's not supposed to be a Jalen Hurts game. It's supposed to be an overall Eagles team game. And he just doesn't get in the way of success, either on the field or, like you're saying, with his demeanor, his attitude, his personality.
Well, that's also, what you said is very important there, right? I think this is the tough part about these discussions, right? Is like it's being good is different for everyone, just like your poll, which I love how you do polls every day now. For 6 years, you wouldn't tweet about our show once, but all of a sudden you do a poll every day. It's nice how that works out. You mentioned Matt Stafford, right? And when you watch Matt Stafford play, there's a little bit of awe to some of the throws he makes, where you're like, oh, all right, Matt Stafford. When you watch Hurts play, there's a smoothness to his game where he doesn't have those throws, if that makes sense, right? Where when you watch him play, like, oh, it's a good throw. Like, that's a completion. Good job. He doesn't always have the wow throws, and I think that's why we don't put him on the same pedestal. He's a really exceptional athlete, but he's not like Lamar quick, if that makes sense, right, Sean? Like, he doesn't, when you watch Lamar play, like, oh boy, that guy's pretty fast, right? That guy's pretty shifty. When you watch Hurts play, he has the same success. Like that touchdown run against the Rams, like that was early in the game. You're like, I mean, that was fantastic. But there's like not that physical element that maybe the other top guys have, even though Jalen's very successful. Jalen, I should say. I think that's maybe why we don't put him in the same tier as the other guys. It's just a visual thing.
Could be. Probably fair. Jeff Schwartz, our guest here, talking some football on ESPN 700. All right. I was flying back from Dubai, that's a flex, while these games were happening, right? So I had to catch the second half of Commanders Eagles at the airport, and then watch pretty much the entire AFC Championship game because my flight, I guess, thankfully got delayed. But there was that 4th and 5 scenario. Yes. Game's on the line. And I'm sitting there watching on an airport television, and I'm scrolling. I have my laptop out. I've got my phone with Twitter, and I'm seeing everybody that I pay attention to, all the football voices on social media that I pay attention to, are all saying the exact same thing in that moment. As the real time, like there was plenty of time between second and third down, plenty of time between third and fourth down. And Jeff Schwartz is out there saying, like, okay, we know there's pressure coming.
Yeah.
What's the pressure going to be? I had Eric Weddle on the show to start the show today. And he was like, I was sitting there watching it with my son and my wife. And I told them exactly what was going to happen, and that's exactly what was going to happen. Jeff, my entire feed was full of people who knew what Spags was going to do. And I don't know that was the play call to counter that.
Yeah.
Now, Josh Allen was great and got the throw off. We'll get to that here in a second. But how does it happen that you know what's going to happen? Yeah. Eric Weddle knows what's going to happen. Joe Schmo on Twitter knows what's going to happen. But McDermott and company don't.
I would like to defend Kincaid, by the way, when we get to that very quickly. Because
I will give you the floor to do that, certainly.
Well, so after the game, Josh Allen said they thought the pressure was coming from the other side. And I'm not going to try to do this on social media because I think Josh Allen is just wrong. That's not what the Chiefs. I mean, the previous two plays, they brought the pressure exactly where they showed the pressure. So I don't know. I mean, I guess Osiris Torres, the right guard, said that was what they did it well. So he said, Sean, that they were showing pressure from one side and then bringing it from the other side, which is something the Chiefs sometimes do. But sometimes they just show you what they're going to do and they just do it. And the sin of that play was two things. One was getting fooled on where the pressure was coming from, but really the most important thing, I think, is that the formation and the play call did not give them any outs if pressure showed up, right? So a corner pressure is not easily defeated, but easier to see if that single wide receiver is not in a condensed formation, right? When that he was right next to the right tackle. Well, that gives Trent McDuffie, I mean, just he's there in 2.5 seconds. Right. Where if he'd go from the regular alignment, maybe outside the numbers, then it takes him 3 seconds, 4 or 5 seconds. And by that time, you can throw the ball out to, there might have been Cooper out there or Samuel, whoever it was, like throw the ball quickly and just make a play, boom, gone, okay? So the condensed formation allows the Chiefs to bring the corner pressure. Like that's, the Chiefs bring some corner pressure, Sean, but a lot of times it's in these critical moments where they bring that pressure. They did that moment. And then there was no out, right? Like there was no, I know there was a long thing about, we were up in arms, a lot of the football players, about that one tweet from Benjamin Solak of ESPN or on the orbit motion and throwing a Shakir. But if you watch like what Kurt Warner said or other players have said, like they actually know the hots and sights and stuff, like he wasn't really an option. Like, yeah, in an ideal world, 10's the guy who's a hot guy, but by the time that happens, because of the motion, it takes too long, right, Sean? So the sin of that was not even knowing they weren't going to blitz or where it's coming from, but not building outs in the offense for the pressure. And so they were fooled. And in that moment, I just think you can't be fooled. I thought, everyone talks about the officials and blah, 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 but the game came down to the Chiefs coaches had a better plan. Even if you go back to the two previous plays, the Chiefs ran a zero pressure on third down. Great job by George Karlaftis retracing and tackling. I think it was Samuel who had the ball. And then the second down play, I think there was one that was batted down by Amenahue. The first down play, Allen just missed. I mean, they were pressuring him. They were giving him different looks, and that's what Spags always does. He always has sort of the right blitz, the right pressure look, and the coaches on the Chiefs did a better job than Buffalo.
It's funny because I was just listening to you talking about that condensed formation, and this is what we try to do on the Sean O'Connell Show, bring smart people on here. Jeff played offense on the offensive line at the NFL level for a decade and knows the rules and how those things, what you do offensively can trigger the defense into doing something. And Weddle, who came on earlier, obviously was on the opposite side of things and was very adept at recognizing what an offense was trying to do. And he said the exact same thing that you just said, that if you're going to have that wide receiver basically in the tackle box, you're absolutely triggering a corner to come. Yeah. He's right there. Like it's going to make it happen if it wasn't already the call. So and two, this is important because I think people have sort of, there's the common answer of like, well, just block them. Like I thought RG3 just gave like the most bland thing. He said like, oh, we can account for everyone. Yeah, no, you don't ever account for the corner. The corner is on the quarterback or the running back. Like that's not a thing you ever account for. And again, because typically the corner comes from depth or from further away, you can adjust quickly, right? The back can scan and see that guy, or Josh Allen can make a move. But because he was so close, you can't see that. And so just like it hits so fast. So you're never making adjustment to account for the corner. It's just never going to happen. It's just, it's rare. It's kind of pointless to worry about that guy, but you can worry about 20 who Justin Reed was standing there in the B gap. Like the Bills had a sort of failure. Josh Allen failed, but not recognizing it. I thought the formation and the play call wasn't great, considering you thought that was going to happen or you knew pressure was coming. I thought the right tackle made a mistake in what his protection, but I don't know his protection. I'm just telling you how I would teach it. So again, like there just was a failure all around, but you got to give the Chiefs credit because they called a good protection. And then the Kincaid thing, Sean. Okay, look,
I know people, and look, it's solely fair to say he should have caught the football, went through his arms. Absolutely true. That was like a baseball player trying to field like a ball at the end of the bat. The spin of that football was funky, man. It was spinning like the other direction from where he was. He had to stop and like turn and try to make the play. I think he's getting a little bit too much grief for that. I think that's a very tough catch, even though it did go through his hands. I get that. But that would have been a really, really special catch.
I think that it was painful he's got a huge number of fans here in Salt Lake City because of what he did in a Utah uniform. And we saw him make catches that were ridiculous, and that one would have been a really difficult catch. I think the fact that his hands, it hit his forearms, he didn't get his hands involved in the catch was maybe one of the issues. But in any case, you're right. I mean, he's a young player trying to make a difficult play. He's beating himself up over it. The crazy thing about it was that 2 weeks in a row, you get a tight end in a game-changing scenario, catch the ball, and things are potentially a lot different.
Oh, yeah, Mark Andrews, you're right, yeah.
Unfortunately for both Mark Andrews and Dalton Kincaid, not able to make that play. Yeah. Really tough. But, okay, so we walked through that whole scenario, and that was kind of what I wanted to talk about most with you. But now you've got Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Spags, the Kansas City Chiefs, poised to make history in the NFL.
Yeah.
How confident are you that that's what plays out in a week and a half?
I mean, I bet on them already to win. I just think that you just take them until they lose, essentially. And I think the Eagles are probably better. Offensive line, Chiefs are good. Eagles are healthier and better if you assume Juergens is back and Dickerson is able to play. Defensive line, Chris Jones is probably the best defensive lineman, but defense line as a whole goes to Philly. I would say linebackers are Philly. Secondary is probably Chiefs. Even the Eagles secondary is not bad. Wide receivers as a whole, it's Devontae Smith and Brown are better than anyone the Chiefs have, but I think Worthy and Brown are obviously serviceable. Tight end goes to Kansas City, but Dallas Goedert's not bad, and Kelsey looks older, right? I mean, running back is certainly Saquon Barkley, but you look at coaching staff, and I love what the Chiefs have there. I think Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio are great, by the way, and Sirianni does a good job. So, and quarterback goes to Chiefs. The Eagles are really good, Sean. Look, if Eagles win this game, won't surprise me. But this is a 3-point game, man. It's going to be the same as the Buffalo game. Like, it's coming down to, is a game within a field goal with 15 minutes left, and then who makes more plays, right? Who makes more plays? The Chiefs made more plays than Buffalo in the last 15 minutes, and that's what Chiefs have always done. They make more plays in their teams. They play in the critical moments, and it's what sets them apart from other teams.
All right, switching gears just a teeny bit before I let you go. I was diving into this yesterday on the way too early predictions and the DraftKings betting odds. Arizona State plus 9,000 to win a national championship. Kansas State plus 9,000 to win a national championship. Colorado plus 10,000. Utah plus 12,000, tied with Iowa State in the Big 12, and then BYU at plus 15,000.
Yeah.
Where are you laying the money?
If I had to on one of those teams?
Yeah, because obviously you're not putting it on any of them. You
have
no joyful precociousness or imagination.
Well, it's funny. Actually, I wrote an article for Fox last week about college football, looking 2025, 25 odds for championship. I don't even. I mean, like one team I would maybe Texas. I just think there's not right now. There's so much unknown for a lot of these teams. So who's playing quarterback for Kansas State, right? I think Arizona State's going to be a team we overvalue this year. They ended up playing like the 7 worst teams in the conference, which is what Colorado had that issue too. And what's funny is I thought Arizona State was going to be bad because they were going to play all the best teams in the it just didn't happen that way, Sean, which is kind of crazy. It didn't happen that way.
But they went down to the wire with Texas, though. I mean, they were a good team.
But I think they overachieved. Okay, so Arizona State's a favorite. Kansas State, you said. I'm looking right now at the odds. I mean, BYU's going to be ranked in the top 10. I mean, value-wise, based off of where I think these teams will be in the preseason rankings, BYU to have longer odds than 4 teams, that it will be higher ranked than 5 teams. because Kansas State, Arizona State, Colorado, Iowa State, Utah, BYU. The best value here is BYU, I think, because they're going to start as a top 10 team most likely. Colorado's 10th out. That's ridiculous. We don't even know what their roster looks like for next season. So I would say BYU for the value. If you just look at straight, like, okay, where they start the season out, the expectations, and oh wait, they're the 6th best odds. I would say BYU.
How much should I put on Devin Dampier, the presumed starter for University of Utah, at plus 15,000 to win a Heisman?
I think you like money. I think you do. So 0. I'll put $0. Yeah, you can put down Maddox Matson, 300 to 1.
The Boise State guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. That's where I'm going to lay it.
I don't see any. There's no way you're losing that wager.
Perfect. Appreciate your time as always. Thanks for the insight. Love talking.
You're welcome, buddy.
All right.
I'll talk to you next week.
Jeff Schwartz, longtime NFL veteran, betting insider, who's telling you to keep your money on those futures odds for a Devin Dampier Heisman. A lot of our listeners aren't going to love that he says BYU is the best value, but he does make a point.
He just got canceled by everybody in Salt Lake.
He does make an objective point that BYU is going to be ranked higher than a lot of those teams that DraftKings is giving better national championship odds. Newsflash: nobody in the Big 12 is going to win a national championship next year. Not with Ohio State bringing back what they're bringing back and adding what they're adding. Same with Oregon. Same with Texas. Same with –
although there's some staff turmoil with Ohio State that we don't have a ton of time to get into. But Jim Knowles leaving for Penn State, and that's a huge loss. Then we've got this quality control coach thing who's facing some allegations and is under investigation. I don't know, how big a deal is it to potentially lose your quality control coach?
I just don't think it's that big of a deal.
You don't think so? Okay.
It's such a machine, right?
Yeah.
Like Ohio State's such a machine. I don't know that one. Now, what could cause a problem is if this guy is instrumental in recruiting certain players, if this guy is important to the university on that kind of behind the scenes front.
It's kind of a vague title, quality control coach, I guess. For me,
it's like
maybe I'm just too ignorant on it.
You're effectively, you're not a position coach, right?
Yeah.
You're added to the staff. There's like this unlimited number of staff members now at places like Ohio State. But that's why I'm asking, like, well, is he helping more in the recruiting department? Is he just the guy who cuts tape? Like, what is he really doing? And by the way, thank you for forwarding me the article. But this is like real cloak and dagger. They're not even telling
is, isn't it?
They're not telling anyone what he's accused of right now.
Yeah, even the attorney has the line of the article. He's like, got evidence, show me.
Yeah. They don't, like, even the attorney doesn't seem to know what this is really over. So
you got to take the defense attorney, in this case, defense air quotes, with a grain of salt. But it was interesting to hear him say, show us the evidence, and we'll deal with it.
I spent a good amount of time on the Knowles thing because the fact that Ohio State allowed him to go to Penn State is that is a terrible move.
It's weird.
He had the number one defense in the country. And also the fact that you can be an assistant coach in college football and make $3.1 million a year is banana sandwich. But that's where we're at. All right, got to take a break. We're going to come back, talk a little Utah Hockey Club with Belle Fraser. That's our Utah Hockey Club insider over at the Salt Lake Tribune. Looking forward to a conversation on a Utah Hockey Club team that is red hot, ? Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show continues here on a Wednesday. It's a game day for the Utah Hockey Club. Pittsburgh Penguins, as James said in his update, an Original Six franchise. Winnable game for a team that has won 4 of the last 5. Joining us to talk about all of this, Belle Frazier, Utah Hockey Club insider over at the Salt Lake Tribune. Belle, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Glad to have you on. I guess I should ask you, feels like a very winnable game for this Utah Hockey Club. Do you categorize it as such?
Yeah, I mean, they played well against Pittsburgh earlier this season, and Pittsburgh has lost 3 of its last 4 games, I believe, is at the bottom of the Metro. But, again, you can't underestimate any team in the NHL. They have a big group of future Hall of Famers on that team, namely Sidney Crosby. So I think when you have that caliber of talent on any roster, you can't go in thinking it's going to be an easy night. And Utah really doesn't have the right to underestimate any opponent with the way they played. Sunday against the Ottawa Senators was a really slow, disjointed game that they lost 3-1. And they're on a 2-game losing streak right now when they're 6 points out of the playoffs, and every game really matters for them. So I really don't think they care who the opponent is. It's just another opportunity to win. And yes, this should be one of the easier games compared to playing Winnipeg twice in 4 games, but I don't think that's a mindset Utah can afford to have right now.
I'm looking at your Twitter feed right now. They're eyeing a potential return for Sergachev, and I think the quote was that if everything goes according to plan, he will be back on the ice. How big a deal is that for this team right now?
That'll be huge for them. I mean, we talk about it, I feel like basically every week, every month about the injuries that they've had defensively, and losing Sergachev was a really big deal for them because he's one of the main guys that had stepped up and filled that gap, skating 25 minutes a night, power play, penalty kill, 5-on-5. So he missed 5 games, I believe. He was listed as day-to-day with an upper body injury, and he did not join the team on their most recent 3-game road trip. But yesterday, Utah had a full practice in Utah, and he was a full participant. Same with this morning at morning skate. He's currently skating on the first pair with John Marino. And that's a combination that I think Bill Armstrong and a lot of fans envisioned when they acquired both of those players this summer. But because Marino was hurt and then Sergachev was hurt, it hasn't come to fruition yet. So if Sergachev is ready to go, that will be a pair that people will see for the first time. And it seems like he is. It's a game time decision, but he practiced on the power play this morning and did line rushes. So unless the doctors really don't feel comfortable with it come game time, it'll change. But it seems like he'll be ready to go, if not tonight, during this homestand.
Assuming that is the tandem, and that I agree with you. I think that was the plan, to be the number one tandem. How long do you think it'll take guys with that level of experience to kind of like gel together?
Yeah, that's something that we've asked them about too. And it was funny. I was talking to John Marino yesterday about skating with Sergachev and getting reps because the team really wants Sergachev to have the puck and shoot and be offensive-minded because that's what he's good at. But John Marino is also a two-way defenseman who has a bit of an offensive flair, and he said the plan is just to give Sergachev the puck. He was kind of joking. He's like, I'm just going to get rid of it and give it to him because the talent he has and what he's able to do if he's left open in the O-zone, that's the guy that you want to make the play. So I think Marino is able to play more of a defenseman game when he's with Sergachev. And he's been solid. He's been steady. So I think you'll see that from them. But it definitely probably will take a few games for them to really learn each other's tendencies and the pace of how one another plays. But both of those guys have been in the league for quite some time now, or experienced, have been on winning teams. So it's not like you're throwing in a second-year defenseman with Sergachev right now. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And it's also something these guys have had to deal with all season. It feels like every defenseman has basically played with every other defenseman on this team just because of injuries. So sure, it might take a couple shifts, couple games, but I don't think it'll be, a glaring issue for those two.
I thought it was interesting what Coach Bear said about the goalie rotation. He actually said it's not a rotation. They're just taking it game by game. And
right.
The quote was, it can be opponent recent performance, communication with the goalie coach, past performance against certain teams. Do we know which of those variables is like most important?
I don't know. It seems like probably talking to Corey Schraub, the goaltender coach, is most important, and also looking at rest and load management and just how they played the game before as well. But I know Coach said it wasn't a rotation, but the way they're doing it, it's kind of the definition of a rotation because Vejmelka played 2 of the 3 games on the road, and now they're switching back to Ingram. So I don't think it's a bad thing. You know, I think the modern NHL, a lot of teams use both of their goaltenders, and Utah now has the luxury of having 2 healthy, experienced goaltenders who are ready to go on a nightly basis. So it's not a bad problem to have, but we've talked to both of those guys, and specifically Vejmelka, he says, you know, I want to play every single night. My body feels better when I'm playing every night. It's easier to just get in that pattern, and that was what he was in when Ingram took his time off. So I think it's probably an adjustment to be on and off on a nightly basis for both of them, and it's yet to see if they'll kind of just stick with one starter again. I think they're trying to feel out how Ingram can pick up his consistency after getting back earlier this month. You know, he's only played 4 or 5 games since returning. So I think you have to give him a chance to string some good games together, which he has, and then you make the decision. And, you know, looking at the trade deadline coming up too, a lot of teams need goalies, and Utah has 2. So I wonder if they're thinking about that. No real reporting on that, and they obviously haven't said anything about it, but I definitely think that's something you keep an eye on when Utah's, you know, one of the few teams in the league that has 2 goalies that they could go to for the starting position.
Utah Hockey Club insider Belle Fraser from the Salt Lake Tribune, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Penguins tonight. You got a game on Friday. You got a game on Sunday. The activity in the NHL regular season just continues. And you did a great piece, I guess it came out, late last week, about the way these guys kind of sustain their bodies. How interesting was that for you? How much fun did you have diving in to kind of the recovery habits and the different rituals these guys go through?
Yeah, it was honestly kind of a selfish story for me to write because it was something I was just really curious about, and I'm glad people also were curious about it and found it interesting too. But, you know, we follow this team on their schedule, and I always wake up the morning after a game, and I think I'm tired going to practice, and then you think about these guys who played a 3-hour game and are on the ice again. So I think, and you see them do it every single day for weeks and months on end. So talking behind the scenes, you know, the players take care of their bodies as well as they can, but Utah has really invested in a strong, high-performance sports science group that is looking at data and collecting information on these guys on a daily basis in practice during games to craft the right schedule, the right recovery measurements. And I thought beyond lifting weights and rest days and naps and stuff, Clayton Keller was talking about how he has a chef and he took blood tests to figure out what foods work best for him in recovery. So on game days, he has French toast and berries, and he has the same lunch every day. And Sergachev talked about how he doesn't eat after games so he can get better sleep. So I think there's just a lot of little things that these players do that you would never really think about and how much they value their body. I mean, it's their work. So self-improvement is really just helping the team out. But yeah, it was cool to go behind the scenes and kind of see the little routines that these guys have that make them the best performers that they can be. Specifically Ian Cole, who's quoted in that too, and he's 35 years old and looks like he has a lot left in the tank and is an important player for Utah. So yeah, just hearing about those things were interesting, and I hope other people kind of got a new perspective on the team from it.
Here's an idea on something I want to see now, because this was really fascinating. You know, we talk about sports performance and we hear about it. We've heard about it for a long time with the whole load management discussion in the NBA, and we know a lot about the way it's handled, like for the university football teams here. I want the Utah Hockey Club players to sit down with the Utah Jazz players and have them talk with each other about things like rest and load management, because it's crazy just the cultural difference in hockey versus in basketball. Maybe I'm overestimating how much the hockey toughness thing really comes into play. But these guys, like you said, it's an equally demanding schedule from the amount of games played, but it's obviously a much more physical game. And it's just like there's not the same level of rest for the sake of rest discussion in hockey, it doesn't seem, as there is in something like basketball. And it blows me away because, at least the way I observe it, one game seems like it'd be a lot harder on your body.
Yeah, and these guys, it's funny too, they want to practice, especially coach too. They'll sometimes cancel a practice late just because they want to get on the ice, but then the sports science team will be like, listen, they really shouldn't skate today. This needs to be a scheduled off day. But those guys are usually ready to go and want to get out there and just want to get playing time in. So I don't think it's usually coming from the players that, oh, we need a day off. They're ready to be at the rink. But I do think you've seen how it's benefited them. They've had a really tough schedule the first half of the season, most road games in the NHL for a stretch there. So those days where they have 2 days between games, I think you've seen them use an off day more likely than not, just because they have that department in their team kind of pushing them to get that rest. But during practices, they're going hard, and they've had a lot of back-to-back practices this season too. So I think there's definitely like an old school hockey mentality to it where you should skate anytime you have ice, but also now they're balancing that with kind of the more modern science side of things.
How long do you think until Dylan Guenther's back?
Coach said day today, which was interesting because last week when we talked to him, he said Dylan Guenther was ways away, but he skated in a non-contact jersey at morning skate today. That was the first time he's joined the team for an official practice since he was ruled out indefinitely with his injury. So he's skating. He looked fine. Obviously, non-contact jersey usually signals that they're at least a week out, but Coach said this morning, day today. So that's what we're going with. He's the man who probably knows the most. So we'll see how that progresses, if he sheds the non-contact jersey in practice this week, and if he's a full participant. If they practice tomorrow, we'll have updates on that. But it sounds like he might be closer to return than initially anticipated when they said indefinitely, which sounded not good.
Okay, so I'm probably not going to get a chance to talk to you, at least on air, before next week at the very earliest. So it's Pittsburgh tonight, and then it's the Blue Jackets, and it's St. Louis. This is a team, as we've talked about, that they're within striking distance of that wild card spot, but you really got to start stacking wins and make sure that you're building that case for yourself now as we round towards the second half of this regular season. This homestand, are these winnable games all throughout, not just tonight, but against Columbus, St. Louis, and even the Flyers?
Yeah, if Utah plays the way they're capable of and the way you've seen them play, even against last game against St. Louis on the 18th or the 20th against Winnipeg when they won 5-2, I believe they can go up against most teams in the NHL when they're fast, when they're taking advantage of special teams, when they're scoring, when they're detailed defensively, and kind of setting the pace for the game instead of waiting for the opponent to decide what type of night it's going to be. But we also saw earlier this month that 7-game homestand, they did not take advantage of it enough. They got 3 out of 7 wins at home, and that could have been a really big turning point for them. So I think this is kind of the big opportunity for them before the Four Nations break. They won't have a game for 2 weeks in the middle of February, and these 4 games go into a 3-game road trip, and then they're done. So I think there probably is an internal pressure to rack up some points right now. And you're not traveling, you're sleeping in your own bed, you're probably a lot more rested, like we were talking about, when you get to be home for a week. So there's really no excuses for these guys, no matter the opponent. But yes, if you're looking at it, you probably rather play Pittsburgh, Columbus, Flyers instead of Capitals, Winnipeg, Panthers, Dallas. So I think that is a good thing. But again, if Utah goes in with that type of mindset, I think that won't reap the results that they are wanting.
Well, enjoy the game tonight. As always, I appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Belle Fraser from the Salt Lake Tribune. If you have not yet done so, go read the article she put out there on the Salt Lake Tribune about the recovery habits and the way that these guys kind of manage. It really is interesting. There's a lot of sports science out there, and there are any range of reactions to the advice that you get from doctors, from nutritionists. There's the technology. Everyone uses those compression sleeves on the legs now. Sergachev uses blue light blockers. Clayton Keller has a red light, like a red light tanning bed kind of situation in his house. He eats French toast every morning. That doesn't sound like such a bad deal. I love me some French toast.
Sugar-free syrup, though, maybe? I don't know.
Got
French
that,
toast doesn't seem to be with the rest. Doesn't seem to be congruent with the rest of that. But maybe that's his one treat.
Well, and when you're burning through the level of calories that these guys are burning through,
it's probably
on
okay.
a regular basis, you could probably afford to have even some of that high fructose corn syrup, fake maple.
Yeah,
you know?
It's like that old long time ago now, the SNL sketch with Michael Phelps. So the Michael Phelps diet, and he's got like a stack of pancakes as tall as you.
It's insane. There was a guy trying to make the NFL as an offensive lineman who I think he had played college. He played like as a tight end in college or something. Or maybe he played college basketball. And so he was having to add an insane amount of weight. And they talked to him at like the combine. And his diet was just like a disgusting amount of food. I love to eat, but what he was talking about was just like blending up cheeseburgers basically and drinking.
Man.
Like
I don't know if any of us love to eat if we're being forced to eat, though.
That's
right?
Right. That's right.
Like we become toddlers who are like, no, I'm done eating.
That's actually something that's interesting about human mentality, where something that you absolutely love doing, if it's turned into a mandate, if it becomes your job, you'll find a way to not like it anymore.
Actually, I like the opposite. I like to starve myself now.
Anyway, big thanks to Bell. Really go check out the article. And maybe if you're not a professional hockey player, don't eat French toast for breakfast every single day. Mix it in, but all things in moderation. All right, we'll close out the show with some topical trivia, and we will give you a chance to hear from Spence Checketts, who's going to be hosting The Drive coming up. Want to remind everyone out there, we have our ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM cash kickoff going on right now. Payday is the word that you want to text to 508-777-1000 for a chance to win. That's payday to 508-777-1000. I'll give away some Billy Idol tickets next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, we got 2 Billy Idol tickets to give away. He's coming in September to the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. You had to have been listening to the show to hear this, but I believe all of you listened for all 3 hours of the Sean O'Connell Show. 877-353-0700. We got deep into the numbers onto the betting stuff that Spence Checketts brought to us yesterday. We went into the weeds. Devin Dampier's Heisman odds. What is the number next to Devin Dampier's name? Happens to also be the same odds that Jake Retzlaff at BYU has. The odds for Devin Dampier as a potential Heisman Trophy winner. 877-353-0700. What's that number? We'll give you 2 Billy Idol tickets if you can get it. The Drive with Spence Checketts is coming up next. Crosstalk is brought to you by Advanced Window Products. If you need new windows, you'll want to buy those directly from the only local manufacturer that is rated like Advanced Window Products is. Sales, installation, warranty service, all of it is done in-house. No middleman markups. $2,500 off 10 windows or more. AdvancedWindows.com or 801-850-9100. Give them a call. Tell them OC sent you. Or tell them Spence Checketts sent you. Hey, bud.
Aquarius new moon tonight. Busy manifesting today. How are you?
Oh, sorry, what? sorry, what?
Isn't that what the kids do these days? Aren't you supposed to sit around when there's a new moon and manifest and not have to go to work and suddenly you have a yacht?
I did not know that. That's probably why I'm yachtless.
Okay. Well, manifest because there's a new moon tonight.
Okay.
I just saw an alert. I don't know why. CNN says there's a new Aquarius moon tonight. I guess CNN's
okay.
They're bored with the current climate of what they have to report upon.
CNN's just like, fine.
Like, screw it. New moon. Send out. We don't know what else to do. Send out the alert. Manifest. No, isn't that the deal? I mean, we always talk about the cold plunge, the sunlight exposure, the living with gratitude, expressing through the heart space. Aren't you supposed to manifest when there's a new moon?
I'm going to get out. I'm going to get barefoot and touch grass.
Ooh, you're a grounder.
I'm going to ground myself.
I like it. By the way, is there a winner for the Devin Dampier Heisman odds?
Let's see here.
Because I honestly don't know what the number is.
Hold on. I got to log back into the text.
Is it?
Okay, we do have the correct answer. The correct answer is plus 15,000.
So it's more likely Devin Dampier will win the Heisman than Utah will win the national championship.
Well, it depends on the sports book that you're looking at, because that's one of the reasons I went down this rabbit hole, because the numbers you brought us yesterday, and I was just like, okay, let's see what everyone else has here. So DraftKings, a rather ubiquitous sports book, has Utah at plus 12,000.
Oh, okay, so better odds for the Utes than in the sports book I saw.
Yeah, and BYU at plus 15,000 to win a national championship. Arizona State, Kansas State at plus 9,000, Colorado at plus 10,000. Jeff Schwartz brought on the comical observation that, like, nobody knows who Colorado's roster is going to be next year.
Right.
So why would you even have odds for something like that? Actually, because of how the interest in Colorado, DraftKings already has an over-under at 6.5 wins for Colorado. Again, we haven't seen them in spring ball. We don't know anything about their depth chart.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know where you're at with gambling, sports gambling. I obviously, as I sit here getting ready to do 2 or 3 Prize Picks reads during my show, I acknowledge the hypocrisy of the entire situation.
Sure.
But I don't know if you saw this. So there's I don't know if it's a company, but it's called Legal Sports Report. And it's a good follow on social if you want to know about things that happen off the court, things that happen off the field, the business side of sport, and how leagues are doing, how ratings are going, and then they have some fun side stories they do. And every year they release data on the amount wagered by Americans on sports. So in 2019, before I think New Jersey was the first state to legalize it, before it started to become legal in certain states, and then apps figured out ways to get around laws to make it legal in the state that you're in to potentially participate here or there. 2019 was the final year before this boom, and I don't know how they have it on record, but 2019, $4.5 billion bet by Americans on sports. 2020 is when things really started to grow, and it was legalized, I think, in 4 states. $22 billion in 2020. 2021, $58 billion. 2022, $94 billion. 2023, $122 billion wagered by Americans on sports. And now we have the data for last year, 2024, $143 billion wagered by Americans on sports. So between 2019 and 2024, that's a growth of $139 billion. Like, this can't end well, dude. This can't end well. And ultimately, I use lines and have used lines for a long, long time before really it became legal to try to understand what very detailed, smart people believe are going to happen in sports, because there's a reason a new casino is built every week down there. Lines makers, more often than not, it's spot on. And so while it's good content right now for us just to kind of talk about what people think is going to happen in the fall, the dirty little secret behind all of it is They want people to talk about it. So somebody at work is listening to the Sean O'Connell show, as they should, for all 3 hours and say, wait, Devin Dampier, $15,000? I'll throw $100 on that. Why not? And boom. Like that's the reason we have all these lines, unfortunately. It feels like a bit of an epidemic that is not going to stop anytime soon.
I mean, when you look at the numbers that you just gave us, that means if you're the casino, right, and like you're getting your share of that 140-something billion from last year, even if you win 51% of the time, it's worth your efforts as a business.
Right.
So,
right.
Anyway, that's those are wild numbers. I also, every time we start talking about billions, like that level of billions, one of my favorite things to do is to point out how hard it is to really, our human feeble brains have a hard time understanding the difference between like millions of dollars and billions of dollars. So understanding the difference between $1 billion and $100 billion, or $1 million and $1 billion, $100 billion is insane. Like, I bring up this factoid every time. 1 million seconds is 11.5 days.
Okay.
How long do you think 1 billion seconds is?
A lot more days than that.
31 years and 8 months.
That's wild.
So
I've never heard that before.
It's because like we just think of you just add on another comma, and you're just like, oh yeah, okay, it's a bunch more zeros, but it's actually like the reality. 1 million is $1,000.
Yeah.
1 billion is 1,000 million.
That's wild.
$1,000.
I just want one of those. I just want 1 billion, and I think I'd be set. If you had an uncle in Uzbekistan that you didn't know about, rich oil dude or whatever, passed away, and he's like, I'm leaving $1 billion to Sean, and that's in your bank account tomorrow, what's your first move? $1 billion, your first move.
Buying ESPN 700.
Oh, no. So I'm out of a job.
No.
The afternoon drive with Zachariah.
You know what my first move is.
Oh, of course. Mine, too. We'll get matching homes on the North Shore.
I'm buying a house on the North Shore.
I'm building one for $1 billion.
Yeah.
I'm buying Kelly Slater's house and breaking it down.
I'm buying 6 houses, and I'm tearing them down, and I'm doing what Mark Zuckerberg has been doing out there.
We'll make a
the
deal.
Locals all hate me.
When you and I get our $1 billion check, we're going to buy property on the North Shore and build homes.
Let's do it.
Love it.
All right. That would be my first move.
Yeah.
And then I would do the George Clooney.
So would I. I'm glad you feel that way. So would I. In fact, I believe that I will do that one day. I sincerely want to do that.
That's my fantasy about, winning the lottery or like stumbling upon an ancient treasure of $1 billion. You get all the people that mattered to you in your life. You have a big dinner. And you say, thank you for helping me become what I am.
Yeah.
And here's a small repayment. George Clooney did that for his high school buddies. He gave them each $1 million. The problem is I have more friends than George Clooney. I want to do it for like 100+ people.
See, my idea
I need a lot more money than George.
Yeah, my idea is to invite like my 20 best friends and then the one friend who's in our group that I don't really like. And then just reveal that my 20 friends are getting $1 million and just be like, hey, thanks for showing up.
Thanks for being here.
Sorry.
You're going to have some Wagyu beef.
You have been annoying me for 25 years, so this is payback. So you're not part of the $1 million group. You're the only other person I've ever heard say the Clooney thing, because I really would like to do that, feel like I'm going to do that at some point. I think it'd be awesome.
I also think that if you're like a billionaire, if you've got tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, you should carry around like that stack of hundreds. And just randomly, when the waiter at the restaurant really gives you a great day or like his incredible service, you just drop that $10,000 tip on their plate, and you're just like, there you go, bless up. There's a guy on Instagram, Jimmy Darts. Everyone know who this person is?
I do not.
He goes into Walmart and finds the people that look most down and most out, which of course you can find at Walmart pretty easily.
Yeah.
And he'll walk up to him and he'll be like, hey, can I borrow $1? And then if they're willing to give him the $1, he'd be like, actually, I don't need $1. Here's $1,000. And it's just like, that's his whole social media presence.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
I don't know if you can do this at Walmart anymore, but I was looking to do something charitable a number of holiday seasons ago, and I didn't even know you could do this because there are people that go to Walmart to put like coats for their kids on layaway. They're like, I have $5 and I'm going to need a coat for my child in the winter. So they put $5 down in like June. You can go to Walmart and pay people's like layaway bills, so they actually get like coats and clothes and basic.
Real?
I don't know if it is anymore.
That's
this
awesome.
was like 6 or 7 years ago. I didn't know you could do that. But yeah, that's, I mean, it's crazy. There are a lot of ways you can give back for sure. But you do need the $1 billion, check from the uncle at some point.
Our public service announcement here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM today is, however it is you give, go ahead and give back. It's a good feeling for all of us.
Love it. Well said.
Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show today on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700.